Chapter 175. Even if it was morning, the rain was heavy. The sky was hazy and dark clouds covered the land. They covered the originally bright sunlight, causing the land to be covered in a shade of gray, even though it was not dark. There were even fewer people in the third layer of Han Mountain City. Raindrops fell on the roofs of the shops in the rain, letting out pitter-patter sounds. The raindrops flowed down from the funnels on both sides like streams and fused with the puddles on the ground. It was impossible to tell the old from the new. The shopkeepers in the shops were either dozing off or meditating. Only a few of them stood at the doors and looked at the rain outside, their thoughts unknown. Su Ming breathed in the humid morning air and the silence of the rain as he walked down the streets of the third layer of Han Mountain City. No one could see his face. They could only see his slightly lonely figure in the rain as he walked past the shops. He did not attract too much attention, but occasionally, when he walked past the gazes of those who were watching the rain, perhaps because he interrupted their sightseeing, he attracted some attention. It was only a single glance, and no one paid any attention to him. No one could imagine what this lonely figure in the rain was going to do, and what sort of shocking change he would bring to Han Mountain City during this morning. Su Ming walked quietly and arrived at the entrance to the second layer along the small path. He looked around and found that he was the only one there. He could not see anyone else. The entrance to the second layer was also a huge door. Originally, only the guests in the transcended realm could enter, but now that the three tribes had sent their guests away, only those in the transcended realm could enter. In the entire Han Mountain City, excluding the people from the three tribes, there were only 5 people who could enter the second layer. To the right of the entrance was a bell that was several dozens of feet tall. The bell was purplish-red in color and seemed to be covered in rust. There was an ancient air about it, as if it had been placed there for a very long time. There were 3 strange-looking ferocious beasts carved on the surface of the bell. One of them was a toad with a dragon's head. Another was a dark turtle with a mountain on its back, and the last one was a blurry picture due to the passage of time. It could not be seen clearly, but it was clear that this ferocious beast was the leader. From its height, the toad with the dragon's head and the dark turtle with a mountain on its back looked as if they were obeying it. At this moment, in the rain, the ancient bell was covered in rainwater. The raindrops fell on it and flowed along the edges of the rainwater. Su Ming stood by the stone door leading to the second layer and looked at the gigantic ancient bell before him. His eyes slowly lit up under the bamboo hat. He had been walking at a moderate pace, neither too fast nor too slow. His footsteps were not quick, but each step he took was steady, as if he was gathering his presence together. He walked from the foot of the mountain to the 4th layer of Han Mountain City, as if he was accumulating power, as if he was being honed by a treasured sword. Now, this power was ready to be unleashed. This sword was sharpened to its peak, only waiting for its power to shock the heavens, only waiting for the sword to shine with a cold light. There's another way to challenge the chains of Han Mountain besides getting help from people like Han Fei Zi from the 3 tribes like Yifeng to get to the summit of Han Mountain. This is for all the berserkers who came to Han Mountain City, and it's to ring this ancient bell. I'll have the bell chimes spread in all directions and announce the challenge of the chains of Han Mountain. Su Ming looked at the drum quietly, and the light in his eyes became brighter. He had asked Yifeng about the chains of Han Mountain a long time ago, and knew that the bell was not something that could be rung by a normal person with a normal level of cultivation. This was also to prevent those who did not have enough power from running to their deaths when challenging the chains of Han Mountain. They would waste each other's time and also desecrate the might of the chains of Han Mountain. If I ring the bell 9 times, I will have the right to challenge the chains of Han Mountain. Since I've chosen to leave behind a shocking scene so that I can prepare myself to enter Freezing Sky Clan, then I'll have to be arrogant for once. Su Ming mumbled. His calm body suddenly changed as he stood in the rain. A shocking presence erupted forth from his body like a sword that had been drawn out of its scabbard, as if half of his power had risen. As his presence rose, a muffled thunder rumbled in the sky as if it was a coincidence. A bolt of lightning hidden in the sky suddenly flashed. Su Ming lifted his right hand under the lightning. He looked at the gigantic ancient bell before him, took a deep breath, and slammed his right hand against the ancient bell. Dong! The bell's chimes were like a tidal wave, and there was a muffled tone to them. There was an ancient air to it, as if it had come from a long time ago. A ripple that could not be seen with the naked eye spread out from the ancient bell, and as the bell rang, it spread out in all directions. The ripple was invisible, but it caused Su Ming's robes to flutter, causing him to feel as if a huge force was crashing into his body, as if it wanted to bounce him away from the ancient bell. Almost the moment the bell reverberated in the sky and earth and spread through the entire Han Mountain city, even reaching the mountains of the three tribes, it immediately startled the countless people who were meditating in the quiet morning amidst the rain. Han Mountain bell chimes. Someone wants to challenge the chains of Han Mountain. I knew it. The closer we get to the people from Freezing Sky Clan, the livelier it becomes in Han Mountain City. Hey, it's just one bell chime. Only those who have the right to challenge the chains have to get 9 chimes, or else they'll need to be acknowledged by the 3 tribes before they can be sent to the top of the mountain. Don't pay too much attention to it. The bell has rung a few times over the past few months, but no one has been able to ring it more than 6 times. In the coming days, this bell chime will continue. After all, joining Freezing Sky Clan is enough to make a person give it their all. Han Mountain City became lively. Quite a number of people walked out and looked at the 3rd layer where Han Mountain Bell was in the rain. However, due to the heavy rain, most of the people only took a glance before they quickly returned to their houses. The few powerful transcendent berserkers in the 2nd layer of Han Mountain City, including Nantian and Kujiosi, heard the bell chimes, but they did not go out to check. Nantian smiled faintly. He was not bothered by it. Kujiosi didn't even open his eyes. He remained silent in his residence, turning a deaf ear to the ringing of the bell. Xianluan and the other 2 powerful transcendent berserkers were mostly the same. Forget one bell chime. Even if the bell chimed 6 or 7 times, they would not pay too much attention to it. The mountains of the 3 tribes around Han Mountain City were silent in the rain. It was as if they did not change because of the bell chimes. In truth, that was indeed the case. Most of the people from the 3 tribes did not pay any attention to it once they heard it. The leaders of the 3 tribes, including Yanluan and even Fang Shun, only opened their eyes from their meditative state before they closed them once again and immersed themselves in their meditation. Only Han Feizi stood by the window of her house and looked at the sky and earth connected by the rain. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at the indistinct Han Mountain City that was covered in rain. Besides her, there was another woman who was also watching Han Mountain in the rain quietly. She was Han Songzi. The first bell chime was like a small stone thrown into water. It stirred up a few ripples, but they soon calmed down. In fact, if half a day had passed, there would be very few people who would pay attention to the bell chimes they heard just now. Su Ming's expression was calm. The ripples formed by the tremors from the bell before him disappeared the moment they fused into his body. They did not affect him in the slightest. The bell chimes still echoed in the air, but besides the echoes and the sounds of rain, there were no other sounds. Not only did no one brave the rain to see who was ringing the bell, even the owners of the shops in the 3rd layer that were not too far away did not walk out of their shops. Everything was still silent. Su Ming lifted his right hand from the bell. Not a single ripple of emotion could be detected in his heart. He placed his right hand down once again. Dong! The 2nd bell chime reverberated in the air, but the moment it did so, Su Ming's gaze was like a sharp sword that had been drawn out of its sheath. As a freezing glare shone from his eyes, he slammed his right hand against the gigantic bell once again. Dong! 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 4 consecutive bell chimes, along with the previous 2 chimes, made a total of 6 chimes. The ancient sound that exuded the feeling of time seemed to have fused together and turned into a sound that shook people's hearts. It even replaced the thunder in the sky and became the only sound that surrounded Han Mountain City and filled the mountains of the 3 tribes. Han Mountain City was shaken. The expressions of the people who had originally returned to their houses changed when they heard the bell chimes that seemed to have fused together. Even the owners of the shops in the third layer of Han Mountain City were shaken. Some of them had already walked out and looked towards the entrance to the second layer, where the ancient bell was with bright eyes. Even Nantion and the others in the second layer had solemn expressions on their faces. There is a complete difference between ringing the bell one after another and ringing the bell so many times in one go and fusing them together. The difference in the rebound they had to endure was also incredibly great. The mountains of the three tribes were also in an uproar due to the bell chimes echoing in the air. Yet at that moment, the seventh bell chime reverberated in the air. The moment it appeared, the eighth and ninth bell chimes reverberated in the air from the ancient bell of Han Mountain City with a presence that could shake the sky and earth. It was as if a gust of wind had swept through the clouds, as if a tidal wave had surged into the sky. The tremors caused the people in Han Mountain City to only register what was going on after a moment. The uproar sounded like a ferocious beast that was suddenly awakened from its slumber. 9 bell chimes. Are these 9 chimes? This is too sudden. These aren't just 9 bell chimes. These 9 chimes have practically fused together. This person is definitely not an ordinary person. We have to watch this sort of person challenge the chains of Han Mountain. Who is it? Who is this person? Could it be one of the 5 powerful, transcendent berserkers? A large number of Han Mountain people immediately rushed out of their houses and looked towards the third layer in the rain. There were even people who charged out to see just who the person who had rung the bell 9 times was. At the same time, Nantion and the others in the second layer of Han Mountain stood up and left their houses to stare at the exit to the third layer. Behind a stone door was the bell, and it was where the person who had rung the bell was. Yin Luan stood up on a mountain belonging to Lake of Colors tribe. Her expression was calm. When she walked out of her house, she looked at Han Mountain City in the rain. With her level of cultivation, she could see layers of ripples spreading out from within Han Mountain City, pushing the rain away, causing no rain to fall in Han Mountain at that moment. Finally, a decent challenger of the chains of Han Mountain has appeared. Make a public announcement and have someone give this challenger a plate that will allow him to head to the summit of Han Mountain. Her words were relaxed, as if she was not shocked, but also as if even if someone rang the bell 9 times, she would not be shocked. However, the moment she said those words, before she could finish speaking, a sound that made her expression change for the first time came from within Han Mountain City. Dong! 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 11, 12 bell chimes reverberated in the air. At the same time, the sky above Han Mountain City was filled with dark clouds. Thunder rumbled, and a wild beast's roar shook the sky. As it roared, the illusionary figure of a gigantic, ferocious beast with the head of a dragon and the body of a toad appeared in the sky. What is this person's level of cultivation? How did he manage to ring the bell 12 times and summon out the shadow of Han Mountain's sealed beast? Yin Luan's breathing quickened slightly, and a bright light appeared in her eyes. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 176. Han Fei Zi stood in her lodgings on the mountain belonging to Lake of Colors tribe. There was a bright light in her eyes as she looked at Han Mountain. She could vaguely see the person who was quietly ringing the ancient bell. That person might be shrouded in fog, but she could already guess that this person might be Mo Su, whom she had been searching for a long time. Is it you? Han Fei Zi mumbled. The elder of Tranquil East tribe sat at the top of the mountain with a calm expression on his face. His thoughts were unknown. The chief of war sat beside him, as well as the tribe leader of Tranquil East tribe, Feng Shun. The 3 of them were silent. The lingering sound of the bell chimes still echoed in their ears. Is it our guest, Mo Su? The elder of Tranquil East tribe asked slowly. His voice was slightly hoarse. I'm not sure. I've already sent someone to take a look. The tribe leader of Tranquil East tribe answered in a low voice. The chief of war hesitated for a moment before he looked at the elder of Tranquil East tribe. Elder, should we send the plate to this person? The elder of Tranquil East tribe, the old man whose face was covered in wrinkles, closed his eyes. He did not refuse, but neither did he agree. Several indistinct figures stood at the top of the mountain, surrounded by black fog, in Puqiang tribe. They looked in the direction of Han Mountain City. They did not speak to each other. They were all looking into the distance coldly. Compared to the calmness of the three tribes, when the gigantic shadow of the dragon toad appeared in the sky above Han Mountain City that was covered in dark clouds, Han Mountain City was completely shaken. Countless people in Han Mountain City braved the rain and looked at the dragon toad in the sky. All of them were shaken to the core, and the bell chimes still echoed in their ears. 12 chimes. Han Mountain Bell has chimed 12 times. This person, he's so powerful. He already has the right to challenge the chains of Han Mountain. Now, he's just waiting for the three tribes to send in their plates. Then he can go to the summit of Gazing Mountain and challenge the chains of Han Mountain. I didn't expect that the bell chime that I thought was just a coincidence would ring 12 times. Who is this person? By the looks of it, he won't stop. How many times can he ring the bell in the end? Figures charged through the fourth layer of Han Mountain and charged towards the entrance to the third layer. At that moment, Fong Lin and the others at the entrance to the third layer were already shaken by the 12 bell chimes. It was especially so for Fong Lin. His mouth was dry and his heart raced against his chest. He had a strong feeling that the person who made the ancient bell chime 12 times was perhaps the somewhat familiar person he saw just now. One figure after another arrived and whizzed past Fong Lin toward the stone door. One by one, they disappeared inside. These people who had the right to enter the third floor had only one goal, and that was to see who the person who had rung the ancient bell was. The owners of the shops in the third layer of Han Mountain City were the first to see Su Ming standing under the ancient bell with his bamboo hat and straw cape. The moment this unfamiliar person entered their eyes, they stopped 1,000 feet away from him. On the second level, Nan Tian, Xianlin, Kujusi, and the others were all standing at the exit of the second level. They knew that the person who had rung the bell 12 times was behind the stone door, but they didn't approach. 12 chimes, huh? I heard that in the history of Han Mountain City, there were 3 people who managed to successfully challenge the chains of Han Mountain that managed to ring the bell more than 12 times and summon the sealed beast of Han Mountain. Nan Tian's gaze fell on the illusionary dragon toad in the sky as he spoke languidly. Brother Nan, you forgot about someone, Kujosi, who was standing beside Nan Tian, suddenly said. The moment he said those words, Nan Tian's expression immediately changed, and he no longer spoke. Xianluan was not too far away. When he heard those words, he seemed to have remembered something, and his face turned slightly pale. There were 4 people in the area, and there was a middle-aged man in green robes standing by their side. That person's attire was strange. The weather in Han Mountain City was hot, even during the rainy season, but this person's attire was incredibly thick. It was as if he still felt cold despite the hot weather. Brother Ku, could the person you're talking about be? When the middle-aged man in green robes spoke, a wisp of white air came out of his mouth. This was a scene that was clearly different from the others. If anyone saw him, they would immediately recognize that this person had the same status as Nantian and the others. He was the 4th transcended berserker in Han Mountain City, Lung Ying. Sima Lung Ying asked languidly. Brother Lung and Brother Yun have only recently arrived in Han Mountain City. Perhaps you don't know this person. Kujio cast Lung Ying a glance and nodded. One of the 5 transcended berserkers in Han Mountain City was Yun Zong, who was also the Brother Yun Kujio spoke of. This person had isolated himself a month ago to make the final preparations to enter Freezing Sky Clan. Sima Xin came to Han Mountain City with Freezing Sky Clan and sounded the ancient bell. Most people don't know the details of this. Only the leaders of the 3 tribes and the 3 of us know. The person who spoke was Xian Luan, whose face was slightly pale. Oh, why is it that most people don't know the details of him sounding the bell? All the people in Han Mountain should know the moment the bell chimes, especially someone with Sima Xin status. He'll definitely be remembered. Lung Ying frowned and looked at Xianlun. Xianluan fell silent for a moment. He was just about to speak when another bell chime reverberated in the air once again. Dong! Su Ming stood beside the ancient bell. His expression remained calm, but his eyes, which were hidden under the bamboo hat, shone with an even brighter light. The rebound from the ancient bell crashed into his body, and he saw the crowd charging towards him from 1,000 feet away. He also saw more people rushing towards him from further away. Gazes pierced through the rain and gathered on his body. 12 bell chimes only shook Han Mountain City, and the 3 tribes still haven't changed much. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the dragon toad that appeared in the clouds in the sky. Besides letting out a roar when the illusion of the beast appeared, it was like a dead creature. It floated in midair and did not move, but there was a faint pressure coming from its body. This doesn't fit into my plan. Looks like these 12 bell chimes aren't enough to create the shock I want. Then, Su Ming lifted his right hand. This time, he did not slap the bell. Instead, he punched the gigantic ancient bell. The moment his fist landed, the 13th bell chime reverberated in the air and turned into invisible ripples that spread outwards. Those ripples could originally not be seen, but in the rain, the raindrops gathered together and turned into a gigantic ring that rapidly spread outwards. That ring spread outwards as if there was a huge gust of wind contained within it. It stirred up the wind and rain, turning into a howl that was hidden under the bell chimes. All those who were touched by the ripples had their clothes and hair fluttering in the wind. At the same time, when the 13th bell chime still lingered in the air, Su Ming lifted his fist and punched once again. This time, he threw 4 punches in a row. If it's not enough, then it's enough. The straw cape on Su Ming's body let out a ripping sound and was torn to shreds, revealing the black robe underneath. However, the bamboo hat on his head did not change in the slightest. It still covered his face. Dong, 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 dong. The bell chimes shook the sky and earth. The 4 consecutive bell chimes turned into 4 ring-shaped ripples that spread outwards, causing the world where Su Ming was to look like water, and he was at the center of the ripples. Han Mountain trembled. Countless mountain rocks fell, and the ground seemed to be trembling. As the ripples spread outwards, the crowd 1,000 feet away retreated with drastic changes in their expressions. At that moment, a muffled roar came from the sky. Intelligence seemed to have appeared in the dragon toad's eyes, and it started moving. Its gigantic body circled around Han Mountain City a few times, causing some of the dark clouds in the sky to disappear. The roar that came out of its mouth shook the ground. It was so loud that it was almost deafening to all those who heard it. A brilliant glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he hurled his fist forward once again. The moment his fist touched the ancient bell, the 18th bell chime rang. The moment the bell chime appeared, the dragon toad's roar reached its peak. Its body trembled, and right before the people's eyes, it disappeared without a trace. Yet the moment it disappeared, a piercing roar came from the air and the sky. Along with the roar was an indescribable mountain in the sky. The size of the mountain surpassed Han Mountain, and it surpassed all the mountains Su Ming had ever seen in his memories. The mountain covered the sky and earth. It appeared as an illusion in midair. The top of the mountain could not be seen. The only thing that could be seen was a gigantic turtle supporting the mountain with its back at the foot of the mountain that looked like the sky. The turtle looked incredibly ferocious. Its face was contorted, and there was a picture of the face of a malicious spirit on it. The turtle was the same as the ghost. Han Mountain Bell, Han Mountain's second sealed beast. All the people who saw this in Han Mountain City felt their breathing quicken. The things that happened in the morning shocked them to the core. It could even be said that they had never seen such a scene in the morning before. To challenge the chains of Han Mountain, the ancient bell had to be rung, but to many people, this chime was the first hurdle. 9 chimes was the limit. Yet now, they heard the bell chime 18 times and saw the rumored Han Mountain sealed beast appear in the sky with their own eyes. Alpine Dark Turtle. It said that Han Mountain Bell didn't belong to Han Mountain Tribe. When the bell chimes, strange things will appear. I've been in Han Mountain City for for many years. I've heard people talk about Han Mountain Bell before. There are 3 ferocious beasts carved on the surface of the bell, but only 2 of them are clear. The last one is indistinct. Even now, few people know what the 3rd ferocious beast is. This person is unfamiliar, but he must be in the transcendence realm, or else he wouldn't have been able to ring the bell 18 times. 18 times. Look at him, he's clearly relaxed. Look, someone from the 3 tribes is here. It's Lake of Colors tribe. The crowd burst into an uproar as they discussed among themselves in shock. Suddenly, someone cried out in surprise. A figure charged towards them from the mountain belonging to Lake of Colors tribe. The person who came was an old man. He approached them through the air, and even though his expression was calm, the shock in his eyes could not be hidden. "Who are you?" "The one who rang the bell." "Do you know the consequences of sounding the bell?" The old man stood in midair, and his voice traveled forth like thunder. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 177. Challenge the Chains of Han Mountain. Su Ming did not turn his head back. Instead, he placed his right hand on the ancient bell once again, and the 19th bell chime sounded. As the bell rang, ripples reverberated and rocks rolled. The alpine-backed black turtle in the sky let out another sharp cry. 19. Just how much does he want to sound? Where is his limit? Does he still want to challenge the chains of Han Mountain? If he gets injured in the process of sounding the bell, then challenging the chains of Han Mountain will be the same as seeking death. This person is arrogant. Look, Lake of Colors tribe has already sent people over, but when he answered, he still sounded the 19th chime. The sounds of discussion stirred up like a violent gust of wind and echoed in the area. The old man from Lake of Colors tribe cast Su Ming a deep look, then brought out a plate from his bosom and threw it at him. "By the orders of the tribe leader, we acknowledge your right to challenge the chains of Han Mountain. Lake of Colors tribe awaits your arrival." When he saw Su Ming taking the plate, the old man turned around and turned into a long arc that charged towards Lake of Colors Mountain to give his report. The silent people on the mountains of the 3 tribes could no longer remain silent. After Lake of Colors tribe, a long arc also charged over from the mountains of Tranquil tribe. The person in the long arc was the chief of war. He came personally and charged towards Han Mountain. His appearance was immediately seen by the crowd around him. Chief of war of Tranquil tribe. He actually came in person. Of course he's coming. He's the one who rang the bell 19 times. Tranquil chief of war closed in, but he did not stand in midair. Instead, he descended and stood 100 feet away from Su Ming. He looked at him, and his eyes sparkled. After a long while, he wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed towards Su Ming. "By the orders of the elder, we acknowledge your right to challenge the chains of Han Mountain. Tranquil tribe awaits your arrival." As he spoke, Tranquil chief of war brought out the plate. Once he handed it over respectfully, he cast Su Ming a profound look, then turned around and left. He recognized the person in front of him. It was Mo Su. However, he didn't want to offend Mo Su, especially since he could sense that Mo Su's aura was shockingly similar to Semiac science. That gave him a guess, and he didn't want to offend Mo Su. 3 tribes are only missing Puqiang. Logically speaking, people from Puqiang tribe should be here by now. It's a pity that once the people from Puqiang come, the mysterious challenger of the chains of Han Mountain might stop ringing. We still won't be able to see the 3rd beast on Han Mountain Bell. Su Ming stood beside the ancient bell and did not continue sounding it. He could feel the rebound from the ancient bell becoming stronger. The 20th time was definitely not easy. Once he sounded it, the rebound would affect him. In the blink of an eye, an incense stick's worth of time had passed. During this incense stick's worth of time, more and more people gathered in the surroundings. In the end, apart from those who were unable to enter the 3rd level, everyone else was here. Those gazes were trained on Su Ming and did not leave even after a long time had passed, as if they wanted to see through his bamboo hat and black robes and see just what he looked like and just who he was. He sounded 19 times. If he can clear the chains of Han Mountain, then his name will definitely be like the sun at noon. It's not impossible for him to enter freezing sky clan. There's no need for that. He is already illustrious. That's strange. Why hasn't anyone from Puqiang tribe arrived yet? The sounds of discussion buzzed. Many people's gazes occasionally landed on the mountain peak of Puqiang tribe, which was shrouded in black mist. Suming frowned slightly. He waited for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, but Puqiang tribe remained silent. I don't have much contact with Puqiang tribe, so I don't really understand this tribe. But I can feel that this tribe is very mysterious. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at Puqiang tribe's mountain. The mist on the mountain was very thick and filled with the stench of death. He waited for a while more, and gradually, the people around him also noticed that something was off. They looked towards Puqiang Mountain. Even the leaders of Lake of Colors tribe and Tranquil East tribe cast their gazes towards Puqiang tribe. They're using the mountain to intimidate us. A chilling glare appeared in Su Ming's eyes as he stared at Puqiang Mountain. He could vaguely guess Puqiang tribe's intentions. They wanted to use this chance to show off their tribe's mysteriousness and might by refusing to give them the plate. The more Puqiang tribe remained silent, the more attention they would attract. They would not refuse to give Su Ming the plate, but they wanted to make him wait a little longer so that they could elevate their own status. Puqiang tribe is going a little overboard. Yin Luan averted her gaze from Puqiang Mountain and said calmly from Lake of Colors Mountain. The same words came out of Tranquil East tribe's elder's mouth. At that moment, the black mist on Puqiang tribe's mountain trembled and tumbled. A person walked out from within. That person was dressed in a black robe and had an arrogant look on his face as he charged towards Han Mountain City. When he was in midair above Han Mountain, he lowered his head and cast a glance at Su Ming, who was standing beside the ancient bell. The elder is still in isolation. Please wait a little longer. The moment he said those words, the crowd immediately fell silent and cast their gazes on Su Ming. Su Ming did not speak. No one could see the dark expression on his face, hidden under the bamboo hat and black robes. But they could feel that there was a chill gathering around Su Ming's body at that moment. Isolation, huh? Then I'll just wake him up. Su Ming's hoarse voice echoed in the air. This was the first time he spoke since he came to this place. The moment he spoke, Su Ming lifted his right hand and punched the ancient bell. Dong! The 20th chime. The ancient bell trembled and started swinging backwards due to Su Ming's punch. The powerful sound surpassed all the previous bell chimes and reverberated in the air. When it spread in all directions, the 21st bell chime arrived with a force that shook the sky and earth. Su Ming lifted his head swiftly and shock appeared in his eyes. The rebound crashed into his body and he staggered a few steps back. His bamboo hat shattered with a bang, but his black robes still covered his face and no one could see it. How could this be? Su Ming's heart trembled. The two bell chimes fused together and spread out above Han Mountain City like a roar. It turned into a ripple that swept through the air, and not only did it stop the rain, it also caused the alpine dark turtle in the sky to tremble. A strange light appeared in its eyes as it let out a roar. The direction of its roar was Puqiang Mountain. As he roared and the two chimes of the bell fused, the two sounds turned into one and appeared out of nowhere. It was as if some existence in the dark had come from a faraway place, and a voice that did not belong to this world rang out. On! That voice sounded like a bell, but also like the dark turtle's roar. It sounded indistinct, but the moment it traveled out, a shocking roar came from within the black fog on Puqiang Mountain. The black fog that enveloped the entire mountain exploded due to that one sound, turning into an endless amount of black threads that tumbled backwards, revealing most of Puqiang Mountain that had always been hidden under the fog, a rare sight to behold. This sudden change shocked the people around them. In the midst of their shock, they fell into dead silence. They did not know what had happened, did not know why the bell chime this time had such shocking power. The power contained in the fused sound just now had broken through most of Puqiang tribe's power to protect the mountain. In the midst of the silence, the man in black from Puqiang tribe in midair was dumbfounded. There was disbelief on his face, and there was even a hint of fear. On Lake of Colors Mountain, Yin Wan widened her eyes. For the first time, she started trembling. Her expression kept changing, and her breathing quickened as she stared at Han Mountain City. He also activated the power of Han Mountain Bell. At the same time, the eyes of Han Fei Zi, who was also on the same mountain, sparkled. When she sensed that power, her heart trembled. Without any hesitation, she moved, and a white cloud appeared under her feet, charging towards Han Mountain from Lake of Colors Mountain. She wanted to see whether this person was the Mo Su she had been waiting for. On the mountain of Tranquil East Tribe, the elder of Tranquil East Tribe was originally calm, but at that moment his pupils shrank, and he stood up swiftly. He stared at Han Mountain and sucked in a sharp breath. A powerful light appeared in his eyes. I've always thought that he's very similar to Sir Sima. Sir Sima activated the power of Han Mountain and obtained a serendipity in the past. This Emote Su also did the same. Han Mountain Bell, you've existed in Han Mountain for countless years. Even Han Mountain's ancestor couldn't obtain your legacy and serendipity. Over the years, only Sir Sima obtained part of your legacy. Now this Mo Su on Tranquil East Mountain, Han Song Z clenched her fists. Excitement appeared in her beautiful eyes. She knew that she did not make the wrong choice this time. The people on the mountain of Puqiang tribe were also in a state of shock. An uproar broke out among the tribe members in the mountain. As the mountain protecting fog dissipated, the elder of Puqiang tribe could no longer remain calm. Shock appeared in the dull eyes of the skeleton-like old man dressed in purple robes. Given the plate, Su Ming's heart raced against his chest. He stared at Han Mountain Bell, which was still swaying slightly before him, and took a deep breath. The instant his fist touched the bell, he could clearly feel some of the qi in his body being sucked away in a bizarre manner by the bell. He had only rung the bell once, but what reverberated in the air were 2 bell chimes. He also did not expect that once the 2 seemingly normal bell chimes fused together, they would burst forth with a power so powerful that it could make the mountain-protecting fog of Puqiang tribe collapse. This sort of power was definitely not something a normal transcendent berserker could do. Just what sort of power would be needed to destroy the mountain-protecting power of a middle-sized tribe? Su Ming's heart raced. This Han Mountain Bell, could it be a priceless treasure? At that moment, as Han Mountain City was in a state of shock due to the bell chimes, there was a 7-colored mountain located far away in the land of South Morning. That mountain would always shine with a 7-colored light. The 7-colored light replaced the color of the sky. There was a pavilion at the foot of the mountain. A stone table in the pavilion was covered with black and white chess pieces. A man and a woman were sitting there, looking at the chessboard. The man was dressed in green robes. His face was as white as jade, his eyes were like stars, and he was extraordinarily handsome. There was also an indescribable presence about him that made him seem lonely, but also calm. There was a red line that was half a finger long at the center of his brows. He held a white piece in his hand and was about to place it down when he suddenly frowned and lifted his head to look at the horizon in the distance. Big brother Sima, what's wrong? The woman by his side had her chin propped up with her hands. When she lifted her head, she revealed a face that might not be so beautiful that it could cause the downfall of nations and cities, but was filled with wild beauty. If Su Ming was here, the instant he saw this woman, he would definitely feel as if his soul had been struck by lightning and his spirit would be shaken. He would find it unbelievable. Monthly votes. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 178. The woman's eyes were big and shone with a bright, enchanting light. There was a wild beauty in her eyes, and it was enough to make all those who saw it feel their hearts pounding. It's nothing. Someone just touched my thing, but that person can't take it away. The man in green robes smiled faintly and no longer looked at the horizon. Instead, he put down the chess piece in his hand. Equals Nan Tian, and the others looked at the alpine dark turtle in the sky at the entrance of the second layer of Han Mountain City. Their expressions were grave, and there was even a hint of shock hidden within them. They had heard the sound just now and saw the fog protecting Puqiang tribe's mountain shatter because of that sound. After a long while, Nan Tian took a deep breath and asked languidly, "Brother Lung, do you have an answer to your question just now?" Lung Ying fell silent and nodded. Sir Sima came to Han Mountain City for this Han Mountain bell. He observed it for a few days by the side and only rang it 3 times. That's why even if outsiders heard it, they would soon forget about it. There are very few people who know that he rang the bell before, Xianlu said hoarsely by the side. 3 chimes. I was by the tribe leader of Lake of Colors tribe's side at that time. I saw it with my own eyes. Could you see? Mumbled softly. Sir Sima fused 12 chimes together for the first chime. No matter how you listen to it, it's just 1 chime, but it's different when you see it with your own eyes. Han Mountain's sealed beast also appeared at that time, but before it could completely manifest, it was shattered by Sir Sima's second chime. Even the alpine dark turtle was the same. Before it could manifest itself, it was shattered into nothingness by the 3rd chime. As for the 3rd chime, Sir Sima coughed out a bit of blood, but no sealed beast appeared. He stayed for a few days under the bell before he left. A strange light appeared in Lung Ying's eyes. He looked at the stone gate not too far away, and a hint of fanaticism appeared in his eyes. Nan Tian cast a glance at Lung Ying and spoke calmly. Unless you want to challenge the chains of Han Mountain, don't try it. All 3 tribes know that this is a priceless treasure, but it only belongs to Sir Sima. Lung Ying fell silent, and the fanaticism in his eyes gradually disappeared. Su Ming stood beside Han Mountain Bell and looked at it. Everything that had happened just now had shocked him, and it made him have a new guess about this thing. Han Mountain Bell, this is definitely a priceless treasure. Perhaps even Yifeng did not know about this, but it had been placed here all these years, and no one had taken it away. This was definitely not normal. There's only one explanation. This item has a spirit. Unless someone obtains its acknowledgement, then no one can take it away. Han Songzi once said that Sima Xin came to Han Mountain City in the past. I wonder if he discovered the secret of this bell. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. The voice from before was still echoing in his head. 9. The 2 bell chimes fused with the alpenback dark turtle's roar in the sky to form a single word. There seemed to be a great mystery contained within it, and it surrounded Su Ming's heart, causing his eyes to become brighter. At that moment, another long arc charged out from the mountain where Puqiang tribe's fog had mostly disappeared. Within that long arc was an old man. That old man's expression was incredibly respectful, and he was in the transcendence realm. He closed in on Su Ming, not daring to stand in midair. Instead, he landed on the flat ground hundreds of feet away from Su Ming and wrapped his fist in his palm before bowing deeply towards him. I'm here on the elder's orders to give you the plate. Please do not mind what happened just now. As the old man spoke, he placed the plate on the ground and took a few steps back. With a complicated look on his face, he turned around and left. Su Ming did not look at the plate on the ground, but kept his eyes trained on Han Mountain Bell. His eyes sparkled. He could already guess that the number of times the bell chimed was not the reason for him to obtain its acknowledgement. The main point is, a pensive look appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He seemed to have understood something, but it was still a little unclear. I'd advise you not to try. As Su Ming was lost in his thoughts, the stone door leading to the second layer suddenly shone, and 4 people walked out. The appearance of these 4 people immediately caused the originally silent crowd to burst into an uproar once again. Nan Tian, Xianluan, Kujiu Si, and Lung Ying. Besides Yun Zong, all the powerful transcendents in Han Mountain City are here. This is the first time I saw all 4 of them at the same time. He's Sir Lung Ying. I've only heard of him before, but now that I've seen him, he's just as the rumors say. Even scorching magma will instantly turn cold wherever he goes. Su Ming turned his head around and looked at the 4 people who walked out of the stone door. A hint of a smile appeared on his lips, hidden under the black robes. He had seen Nan Tian and Xianluan before. The person who had said those words was Nan Tian. Su Ming looked at the person in black robes who had his face covered. That person had his head lowered, and he could not see his face, but he had a feeling that he had seen this person before. "Sir, what do you mean by your words just now?" Su Ming did not want anyone to recognize him at this moment. This did not fit his plan to enter Freezing Sky Clan, so he asked in a hoarse voice. Nan Tian looked at Su Ming carefully for a moment, then frowned and said languidly, "It's nothing. I'm just reminding you that the owner of the bell might not like it." Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he lifted his right hand and seized the air. Immediately, Puqiang tribe's plate on the ground flew into his hand through the air. At that moment, he had obtained the plates of all 3 tribes and had the right to go to the top of Han Mountain. Once he went there, he could challenge the chains of Han Mountain on any of the 3 summits. Nan Tian smiled faintly and took half a step to the side. Jiu and the others did the same. They opened up a path for Su Ming to walk through the stone door. Su Ming looked at the stone door. He knew that once he walked through it, he would enter the second layer. There would be no more obstacles, and he could go straight to the top. However, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he looked towards Han Mountain Bell. "Just because it's owned doesn't mean I can't snatch it," Su Ming mumbled. With one move, he shot up from the ground, lifted his right foot, turned around, and kicked Han Mountain Bell. Thud, thud, thud. Su Ming's actions made Nan Tian's gaze focus. Jiu and Lung Ying's eyes lit up. Only Xianluan stared at Su Ming as if he had recognized something. The bell chimes again. 22, 23, 24. This person must have transcended, but it's strange. The bell chimes this time don't seem to have the same feeling of shock as before. 25, 26, 27. Just how many times is he going to ring the bell? The rebound is too strong. The crowd burst into an uproar and immediately retreated. With Su Ming and the ancient bell as the center, layers of invisible ripples spread outwards, causing the ground of Han Mountain to tremble. It also made the leaders of the 3 tribes focus their attention on the bell. Su Ming's body froze in midair. The moment he was about to land, he lifted his head swiftly, as if he had finally found a vague feeling. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched the ancient bell. The moment his fist landed, a shocking rebound appeared and crashed into Su Ming's body, causing blood to trickle down the corner of his mouth. He fell to the ground, and once he took 7 to 8 steps back, he coughed out a huge mouthful of blood. Dong! The 28th chime was louder than before, even louder than the fused sound that had scattered the fog in Puqiang Mountain. It turned into a sound that replaced everything in the world and shook the hearts of all those who heard it. It was a powerful sound that caused their minds to instantly go blank, no matter what level of cultivation they had. The moment that sound appeared, the alpine dark turtle in the sky lifted its head and roared. As it roared, its entire body crumbled. And it was not just its body that crumbled. The mountain on its back also crumbled. The sound of the crumbling and the loud bang fused with the bell chime, causing all those who heard it to be unable to tell whether the bell chime was real or whether there were many bell chimes that had appeared at the same time. These sounds fused together, causing the weather to change. The indistinct voice that seemed to have traveled from a long time ago appeared once again. 9 dragons. There was only that one voice in the world. It reverberated in the air, and as it spread out, it made all those who heard it fall into a daze, as if they had lost their minds. It was as if their consciousness had been sucked away by that voice. It was the same for Yanluan. It was the same for the elder of Tranquil East. It was the same for everyone else. Su Ming's senses were the strongest. Booming sounds rang out in his head, and as his mind went blank, a gigantic bell appeared in his head. That bell was Han Mountain Bell. The booming sounds were replaced by bell chimes that reverberated in Su Ming's head, causing him to slowly regain his senses after an unknown amount of time had passed. The moment he regained his senses, the lingering sounds of bell chimes still echoed in his ears. He could clearly see all the people around him standing there, unmoving, with dazed expressions on their faces. Su Ming's breathing quickened. He He seemed to have sensed something and lifted his head swiftly. He saw the shadow of a ferocious beast in the sky, and he was the only one who could see it clearly. This was a gigantic, ferocious beast. Its appearance was still indistinct, but Su Ming could see that it had 9 heads. These 9 heads all had different appearances. Some looked like dragons, some looked like snakes, and some looked like humans. It was incredibly bizarre, but at the same time, Su Ming sucked in a sharp breath. He saw that 6 of the 9 heads had their eyes closed, and only 3 of them had their eyes open. One of the 3 heads that had opened their eyes was looking at him with a gentle gaze. Su Ming could clearly see his own figure in its eyes. As for the other 2 heads, they were looking at him with cold arrogance. In their eyes, Su Ming saw an extraordinarily handsome person dressed in green robes. It was also at that moment that the man in green robes put down the white piece in his hands at the foot of the 7-colored mountain far away from Han Mountain City. "Big brother Sima, you lost this game." The girl by his side laughed in pleasant surprise. Her laughter was like the ringing of silver bells, very pleasing to the ears. She quickly put down the black piece in her hands, and her face was filled with joy and happiness. "Did I lose?" The man in green robes smiled faintly. His smile looked very gentle, but the girl could not see the coldness in his eyes. She could not hear the mumbles in his heart either. "Not necessarily. There are 30 more hours until the end of the double monthly pass. The next time it'll be double will be in September. Please don't waste it, and send some charcoal to my ears. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation." Chapter 179. Su Ming stared at the illusory, 9-headed gigantic beast in the sky, then at the green-robed figure who had eyes for 2 of the 3 intelligent heads. His cold and arrogant gaze seemed to have met Su Ming's gaze for the first time, even though they were separated by the world and were separated by a great distance. A smile appeared on the green-robed figure's lips, and with a hint of disdain, he gradually disappeared from the sky along with the 9-headed beast. As he disappeared, the dark clouds remained, and the rain continued falling. Not necessarily. Su Ming's expression was calm. He suddenly understood the meaning behind the green-robed figure's gaze. He did not know who the green-robed figure was, but Su Ming knew that Han Mountain Bell did not have an owner. The person did not have complete control over it either. He only had 2 of the 9 heads. When the illusionary beast in the sky became completely indistinct and became invisible, the people on the ground opened their eyes, regardless of their levels of cultivation. Even Yin Luan, the elder, and the others on the 3 mountains opened their eyes at that moment. Very few of them knew what had happened. In fact, the dark clouds that filled the sky were no different from before. After a short period of silence, an uproar broke out in the crowd. What happened just now? My mind went blank just now, and I only remember the bell chimes echoing in the air. That's not right. Something must have happened just now, or else it's impossible for all of us to be like this. The sounds of discussion grew louder. When the crowd's gazes gathered on Su Ming standing under the ancient bell, they only saw his back. Su Ming had his head lowered. The black robe covered his face, so his face and expression could not be seen clearly. They could only see an indescribable feeling coming from his back as he walked towards the stone gate leading to the second layer. Nan Tian and the others stood beside the stone gate with shock on their faces as they watched Su Ming walking towards them. During the span of a few breaths, just now, even though they were powerful berserkers in the Transcendence realm, their minds were still blank. They did not know what had happened, but Jiusi instinctively took a few steps back when Su Ming approached him, and respect appeared on his face. Perhaps others might not know, but Jiusi had personally witnessed Sima Xian ring the bell. Although he had only rung it 3 times, it had left him and everyone else with blank memories. Jiusi still remembered that when he had woken up all those years ago, he had seen Sima Xian silently staring at the ancient bell. Shockingly, that image now seemed to overlap with this mysterious person in front of him. Nan Tian's breathing was ragged. Although he didn't know as much as Jiusi, he knew that the bell belonged to Sima Xian. Now that he had experienced that strange blank spot in his memories, he couldn't help but feel a sense of reverence toward the person walking toward him. Snatching this bell from Lord Sima, this person, Nan Tian lowered his head. Xian Luan fell silent. There was a complicated look on his face. He had recognized Su Ming. At that moment, Su Ming had gained an additional layer of mystery in his eyes. That mystery was incredibly profound, causing Xian Luan to instinctively choose to retreat. His level of cultivation isn't as high as mine, but he still makes me wary. He dared to snatch the treasure from Lord Sima, and he seems to have gained something. Just what other secrets does this person have? Is he challenging the chains of Han Mountain just to gain the right to enter Freezing Sky Clan? Thank goodness he's not the berserker who attained completion in the blood solidification realm a few months ago. Xian Luan hesitated for a moment. He realized that he was starting to become uncertain. Under the people's gazes, Su Ming walked past calmly. When he arrived at the stone gate leading to the second layer, he did not stop for even a single moment and walked in. The stone gate suddenly shone brightly. At the same time, the plates from the 3 tribes on Su Ming's body also shone brightly. With a flash, Su Ming disappeared into the stone gate. When Su Ming stepped into the stone gate, an old woman walked out from behind Yin Luanan Lake of Colors Mountain. As she walked, she coughed. Her face was filled with wrinkles, and as she coughed, a sickly red appeared on her face. There were 2 girls supporting the old woman by her side. There was worry on their faces. Yin Luan turned around and looked at the old woman. She immediately took a few steps forward and personally supported the old woman's arm. Tribe leader, the elder must come. One of the girls quickly said, "All right, you can leave now." Yin Luan nodded and supported the old woman to the edge of the mountain. From there, they could see Han Mountain City better. Luan Air, someone obtained a part of Han Mountain Bell's legacy just now, right? There was a dull look in the old woman's eyes. Her voice was hoarse, and there was a hint of weakness in her voice. If Yin Luan had not supported her by her side, she would have fallen. Yin Luan remained silent for a moment before she answered softly, "Yes. This bell has been in Han Mountain for far too long. In fact, Han Mountain Tribe was also named after this bell. Han Mountain Bell was named after Han Mountain's ancestor. In truth, no one knows where it came from and what its name is. It's good that it was taken away. If it stays here, it'll be a source of trouble in the future. It doesn't matter whether it's Sima Xian or that person just now. Whoever can take it away can do so. You don't get involved." But Fei still wants to enter Freezing Sky. Before Yin Luan could finish speaking, the old woman turned around weakly and looked at the beautiful woman before her. She did not speak, only looked at her. After a long while, Yin Luan lowered her head. "Granny, I'll remember this. Luan Air, Lake of Colors tribe, is just a small, middle-sized tribe. We can't afford to offend Sima Xian, but can we afford to offend this person who snatched the bell from Sima Xian? Granny, I'm worried about Freezing Sky Clan. After all, Sima Xian is a disciple that Freezing Sky Clan cares deeply about. Fei still wants to join Freezing Sky Clan. If I don't do anything now, you're still too young." The old woman lifted her trembling hand and patted Yin Luan's shoulder. In her dull eyes, there was wisdom that time had given her. "You can say that Sima Xian is a disciple of Freezing Sky Clan, but can you say that Sima Xian is a disciple of Freezing Sky Clan?" The old woman turned her head around and looked at Han Mountain with a profound gaze. "This is—" Yin Luan was stunned, slightly confused. The old woman sighed softly. She did not look at Yin Luan and spoke softly. "In other words, you can say that Lake of Colors tribe is a tribe in the land of South Morning, but can you say that a tribe in the land of South Morning is Lake of Colors tribe? Do you understand now?" Yin Luan remained silent for a moment before she nodded. "Granny, I've paid a huge price for Freezing Sky Clan. The relocation art with 4 layers is enough to ensure that Lake of Colors tribe will not decline for 1,000 years. Don't provoke this person. If he wants to challenge the chains of Han Mountain, we welcome him." As the old woman spoke, fatigue appeared on her face. At the same time, the elder of Tranquil East Tribe's eyes sparkled on the summit of Tranquil East Tribe. His expression kept changing, as if he was hesitating. He would occasionally look at Lake of Colors Mountain, and when he saw that it remained calm, a resolute look appeared in his eyes. Among the 3 tribes of Han Mountain, the one I respect the most is the elder of Lake of Colors tribe. That old woman might not be a schemer, but her wisdom is crucial when it comes to big matters. If she doesn't move, then we won't move. Han Mountain Bell belongs to whoever can take it away. This bell has never belonged to the 3 tribes. Once we understand this, we can be at ease. The elder of Tranquil East tribe seemed to be talking to himself, but at the same time, he seemed to be talking to the tribe leader of Tranquil East, the chief of war, and the others behind him. Puqiang tribe was also silent. The 3 tribes shared a startling similarity towards this question. They did not ask about it. At that moment, there was only the remnants of morning, but the rain was still heavy. It poured down on the mountain and flowed down the mountain rocks, causing the ground to be slippery. This was the first time Su Ming stepped into the 2nd layer of Han Mountain City. As he stood there, behind him was the stone gate that separated him from the 3rd layer. Before him was the 1st layer of Han Mountain City, which was also the summit of Han Mountain. That place was not too far away from where he was. There was nothing above the 1st layer. There were only 3 chains that extended down from there, connecting the 3 mountains of the 3 tribes. The chains of Han Mountain. A brilliant glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his feet and walked past the quiet 2nd layer at a moderate pace. He walked along the winding mountain path, and after the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, he stood at the highest point of Han Mountain City. The mountain wind howled and blew against Su Ming's face, causing his robes to flutter, but could not blow away the robe that covered his face. The 3 chains that were connected to the top of the mountain swayed in the wind. Below him was a canyon that was hundreds of thousands of feet deep. The wind was bone-chilling, and there were even raindrops in the canyon. Su Ming stood there and let out a deep breath. He did not know whether a powerful transcended berserker would die if he failed and fell into the canyon while challenging the chains of Han Mountain. However, the fact that the chains of Han Mountain had existed for so many years meant that they were definitely not simple. Even if a transcended berserker could fly in the air, there would still be a slim chance of survival. As he stood there, Su Ming looked into the distance. As far as his eyes could see, there were still dark clouds rolling about. It was as if the sky and the earth were connected, and there was no difference between them. The curtain of rain was like a curtain, causing everything to be blurry. Occasionally, thunder would rumble in the sky. There was also the lightning that was difficult to see clearly during the day. Sometimes, a part of it would appear in the clouds. If anyone kept staring at it, they would feel as if their eyes were flickering. He's starting to challenge the chains of Han Mountain. Which tribe's chain will this person choose? I think it might be Lake of Colors. It doesn't matter which tribe he challenges. I want to know whether he'll succeed. How many sections of the 9 sections of the chain can he reach? If he can reach the 7th section, then he'll have succeeded. In the past, when Freezing Sky Clan chose disciples, their standard was to step onto the 8th chain of Han Mountain. There might be some exceptions, but there are just too few people who can make it to the 9th chain. The 9th chain is nothing. From what I know, the 9 sections that have been released to the public are actually just the first of the real chains of Han Mountain. The real chains of Han Mountain are connected to the 8 mountains. They're complete chains that have only appeared twice in the past 1,000 years. The rain may be heavy, but it could not stop the people's attention. Su Ming stood at the top of the mountain. Before him was the chain connected to Lake of Colors tribe. The chain to his right was connected to the mountains of Tranquil East tribe. The chain to his left was connected to Puqiang Mountain, even though it was washed down by the rain. The chain was connected to 3 different mountains. As Su Ming stood there, he could not help but remember the first time he came to Han Mountain City a few years ago. He stood in the 3rd layer and lifted his head to look at Feng standing at the top of the mountain. That scene was reflected in his head and would not disappear for a long time. It's in a few years. How fast? Su Ming mumbled. He took a deep breath and looked at the chain to Puqiang Mountain. A brilliant light appeared in his eyes, and he took a step towards the chain to his left. Ahem, there's a book about girls that I must recommend. The author is from the same city as I am. She's a beauty, and the title of the book is Carefree. Everyone, please collect and support this book. To be continued. If you like this book, please come Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 180. It's Puqiang Mountain. He didn't choose Lake of Colors or Tranquil East. He chose Puqiang. Puqiang tribe has always been mysterious. There aren't many who challenge the chain of mountains. Why did he choose this mountain? Besides, Lake of Colors and Tranquil East are welcoming him. Only Puqiang is cold, and there's even conflict between them. As Su Ming took a step forward, the entire Han Mountain city immediately burst into an uproar. Most of the people were discussing this matter. Su Ming's actions puzzled them. Logically speaking, it was the same for all the mountains that challenged the chains of Han Mountain. Freezing Sky Clan would not choose a specific mountain when they chose their disciples. Compared to Tranquil East Chief of War coming personally and Lake of Colors tribe being the first to give out the plate, it was clear that if it was anyone else, they would not choose the mountain with conflict between them, especially Puqiang, whose bell chimes had destroyed the fog protecting the mountain. The crowd was not the only ones confused. Even Nantian and the other three transcended berserkers were puzzled when they saw Su Ming's actions. Nantian looked at Su Ming's figure at the top of the mountain. He could not understand why Su Ming would make such a choice. Only Xian Luan's pupil shrank. He was originally a guest in Puqiang tribe, so he understood Puqiang very well. He might not be a guest now, but they still had many years of friendship. When he saw Su Ming's choice, for some unknown reason, his heart lurched. He must be after something. Xian Luan narrowed his eyes and stared at Su Ming at the top of the mountain. He remained silent. Lake of Colors tribe and Tranquil East tribe were also puzzled. The elder of Tranquil East tribe and the others looked at Han Mountain from the mountain where their tribe was located. When they saw Su Ming walking towards the chains of Puqiang tribe, the tribe leader of Tranquil East, Fong Shun, frowned. A glint appeared in Tranquil East tribe's elder's eyes as he spoke slowly. Besides obtaining the right to enter Freezing Sky Clan, this maker of Moism seems to have other goals. A fierce look appeared in the eyes of the originally tired elder of Lake of Colors tribe. She looked at Han Mountain, and a contemplative look appeared on her face. Yin Luan was also frowning by her side. Whatever Puqiang tribe can give, Lake of Colors tribe can, but he still chose Puqiang tribe. This person has a goal, and he's prepared. Before he challenged the chains of Han Mountain, he must have made his decision. His goal is not Han Mountain Bell, but Puqiang tribe. The old woman said hoarsely, and the light in her eyes grew brighter. The old woman remained silent for a moment before she mumbled hesitantly. The only thing we can't give is the aura of death gathered by Puqiang's unique berserker art. Compared to Tranquil East and Lake of Colors puzzlement, Puqiang tribe was even more bewildered by this matter. Almost the instant Su Ming chose Puqiang Mountain's chain, a strange light appeared in the eyes of the skeleton-like old man sitting at the top of Puqiang Mountain. There were 8 people sitting behind him, and there were even more people rushing over from below. Elder, someone beside the skeleton-like old man, spoke hesitantly in a low voice. Don't worry about it. This old man shall see if that person can walk over. The elder of Puqiang tribe spoke calmly and touched the bone bracelet on his right hand. His eyes shone brightly as he stared at Han Mountain in the distance. Almost the instant Su Ming's right foot stepped on the swaying chain connected to Puqiang Mountain in the wind and rain, loud booming sounds suddenly reverberated through the sky and earth, drowning out the discussions of the people in Han Mountain. It sounded like muffled roars of thunder, and the ground started trembling. 8 gigantic pillars of 100 feet in thickness shot up from the canyons underneath as the ground trembled. There were some cracks on the 8 gigantic stone pillars, and a large amount of green plants covered them as they rose from the canyons with loud rumbles. Immediately, they lifted the swaying chain and split it into 9 sections. As the 8 gigantic pillars were lifted, clouds of dust rose from the canyons, but the moment the dust appeared, it was immediately scattered by the storm. Thunder flashed in the sky, as if there was a mighty roar in the sky. The 9 sections of the chain were very far apart from each other. As they were connected to each other, they formed a chain road that looked like a bridge between Han Mountain and Puqiang Mountain. The rain continued pouring down, causing the chain to look incredibly slippery. If it was a normal person, they might not even dare to step on it. In fact, even if they did, they would fall to their deaths due to carelessness. It was especially so when the chain became loose and swayed. Not only did it pose a threat to a person's body, it also dealt a blow to their soul. It was as if there was an abyss right before their eyes. A person would instinctively stay away from it. Even if there were people pushing against the chain, they would still struggle to move back. This sort of blow to their soul was something that even a person with a strong will would find it hard not to be affected. Su Ming's right foot landed on the chain. The chain did not stop swaying because his right foot landed on it. It continued swaying in the wind and rain, causing Su Ming's right foot to also sway. Su Ming's expression was incredibly grave. He had never underestimated the chain of Han Mountain. When his foot landed on it, the slippery feeling was incredibly clear, as if it was difficult for him to stand still. No wonder he foamed took a few steps in one go. Even if he stopped, he only dared to do so after he found his footing. Su Ming was not the only one who had a grave expression on his face. At that moment, almost all the people in Han Mountain City had the same expression on their faces. They looked at the person in the rain and the swaying chain under his feet, and nervousness rose within them. He's someone who managed to sound the bell 20-something times. Just how far can he go? He chose the wrong time. The chains of Han Mountain are much more difficult when it's raining. It's not a matter of time. It's raining non-stop during this season. It'll be the same no matter which day it is. The sounds of discussions gradually grew louder as their breathing quickened. Su Ming could not hear any of this. He lifted his left foot, and the moment his right foot found its footing, he took a step forward. That step might seem small, but it meant that Su Ming's feet had left the ground in Han Mountain. At that moment, it could be said that he was standing completely on the chain of Han Mountain. The mountain wind howled and blew past Su Ming as if it wanted to push his body away from the chain, causing his robes to flutter and the chain to sway even more violently as it continued swinging back and forth. Even breathing was difficult in the wind. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at Puqiang Mountain in the distance. As he stood on the chain, his gaze seemed to waver. If that's all, then it's not too difficult. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He stood up straight and walked forward. Every single time his foot landed, he would step on the swaying chain with incredible precision. No matter how the chain moved, it was as if it would automatically move under his feet, allowing him to step on it. He walked steadily. One step at a time, he gradually walked through half of the first section of the chain. 2,000 feet away from him was the 100-feet pillar at the end of the first section of the chain. All the people in Han Mountain City stared unblinkingly at Su Ming's figure in midair. They watched as he walked through most of the first section of the chain and walked towards the first stone pillar. We might not be able to see his expression, but his footsteps are steady. This section shouldn't be difficult for him. That's right, but there are 9 sections of the chains of Han Mountain. The further you go, the stranger they become, or else it wouldn't be so famous, and Freezing Sky Clan would choose to use it as a test to test their qualifications. I wonder how many sections this person will be able to walk through. The sounds of discussions gradually quietened down. Countless gazes were trained on Su Ming in midair. Besides the people from Han Mountain, there were also the tribe members and leaders of the 3 tribes. Due to Su Ming's appearance, the rainy day that had passed by in the morning became different. Su Ming walked through the first section of the chain calmly. When he stood at the end of the first section of the chain and was about to step onto the first stone pillar, his body suddenly trembled. As his body trembled, he seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. This sudden scene immediately caused the people below to cry out in surprise. This is just the first section. Can he not take it anymore? That's impossible. He sounded the bell 20-something times. How can he do this in the first section? How is this possible? Could it be? Cries of surprise rose and fell, instantly turning into an uproar. Even the gazes of the people from Lake of Colors tribe and Tranquil East tribe were immediately attracted the moment they saw this. Despicable. A glint appeared in Yen Wan's eyes, and she spoke with a cold sneer. The old woman by her side did not speak. She merely cast a glance at Puqiang Mountain. On the summit of Tranquil East tribe, the elder of Tranquil East tribe also looked at Puqiang Mountain with a profound look. He smiled faintly, but did not speak. However, behind him, the tribe leader of Tranquil East tribe, Fong Shun, had a fierce look in his eyes. Since when did Puqiang tribe become so petty? There were already a dozen-something people sitting on Puqiang Mountain. The elder was the leader of these people, and all of them were silent. "Give me an explanation," the elder of Puqiang tribe said slowly. Su Ming lifted his head abruptly. The moment his foot landed on the ground, just now, a strong wave of power immediately traveled from the chain and surged into his body through his right foot without a sound. That power was filled with the presence of death, as if it wanted to freeze the qi in his body. However, Su Ming already had 979 blood veins. Even a normal, powerful berserker in the Transcendence realm would find it difficult to freeze his blood veins. He let out a cold harumph. Not only did he not lift his right foot, he instead continued stepping on the chain with his left foot. At the same time, the power of the 979 blood veins in his body spread out through his feet and fused into the chain, crashing into the wave of ripples that continued charging towards him hundreds of feet away. The power of the two waves of ripples blocked off the first stone pillar. As the stone pillar trembled, a large amount of stones fell off, but it still stood tall. Su Ming had already noticed that there was a strange layer of strengthening power on the stone pillar. That power was somewhat familiar to him. It was the presence of Han Mountain's ancestor. Even if that presence was very faint, even if Han Mountain's ancestor was already dead, the presence he left on the pillar could still ensure that the pillar would not be destroyed. The muffled boom formed by the two waves of power crashing into each other was drowned out by the thunder in the sky, causing no one to be able to hear it clearly. At the same time, a middle-aged man among the dozen-something people sitting on the top of Puqiang Mountain shuddered. Blood trickled down the corner of his mouth as he looked towards the elder of Puqiang tribe. He touched the treasure left behind by Sir Sima. Sir Sima did not want to lower himself to his level, but this person has offended us. He must be punished. He overestimated himself. The elder of Puqiang tribe said calmly. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Achidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 181. The elder of Puqiang tribe did not even look at the middle-aged man as he spoke languidly. I punish you to isolate yourself for 3 years. You are not allowed to go out. The middle-aged man remained silent and wiped off the blood at the corner of his mouth. He stood up and bowed towards the elder. He hesitated for a moment as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he chose to keep his mouth shut and left respectfully. Yet just as he reached the edge of the mountain stairs and was about to go down, "You've alerted the enemy. You can't do anything right, but will only spoil things. 3 years is too little. Isolate yourself for 6 years and don't go out." The elder of Puqiang tribe looked at Su Ming standing on the chain of Han Mountain in the rain and spoke once again. Yet this time, not only did the middle-aged man not show any resentment, he became even more respectful and bowed towards the elder once again. "Thank you, elder." As the man left, Puqiang Mountain fell into silence once again. Su Ming looked at Puqiang Mountain in the distance, and a chilling glint appeared in his eyes. He could feel a freezing aura continuously coming from this place. Once he passed the first stone pillar, the freezing aura would seep into his body with each step he took, causing his legs to gradually stiffen. The further I go, the more difficult it will be, and what happened just now was definitely not a coincidence. The freezing glare in Su Ming's eyes grew stronger, and a cold sneer appeared at the corners of his lips. He stood at the end of the first section of the chain, lifted his foot, and stepped on the first stone pillar before him. A great power erupted from Su Ming's body with a bang and turned into a wave of impact through his right foot. The instant his foot landed on the stone pillar, loud rumbling sounds came from it, and cracking sounds came from it. Cracks appeared under Su Ming's feet, and as they spread out, they went through the entire stone pillar. The stone pillar had existed for many years and had never collapsed because no one dared to destroy it while challenging the chains of Han Mountain. Another reason was that once it was destroyed, there would no longer be a place to rest, and the challenge would become even more difficult. Yet more importantly, there was a strange power within the pillars. That power made it difficult for others to destroy them, but Su Ming was not one of them. That power belonged to Han Mountain's ancestor. It was a power similar to the brand, and Su Ming also possessed the power of the brand. It would have been fine if Han Mountain's ancestor had not died, but he was already dead. Most of the presence on the pillars had already faded away through the passage of time. When Su Ming's brand crashed into them, a flaw immediately appeared on them, causing the power of his 979 blood veins to crash into them. As the stone pillar trembled, under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, it shattered with a bang and crumbled under the chains of Han Mountain. As it shattered, the chain of Han Mountain sank down, but Su Ming was not affected in the slightest as he stood on it. He stood there, and the instant the stone pillar collapsed, he looked towards Puqiang Mountain in the distance. "Count me in. I'll destroy one of your stone pillars." Su Ming did not say these words out loud, but his aloof gaze sent those words out in an unseen manner. He did not threaten them with words. Su Ming chose to use his actions to respond to Puqiang tribe's plot against him. He was clearly telling them that he had the power to destroy their stone pillars. When the people in Han Mountain City saw this, they immediately burst into an uproar. They had seen the challengers of the chains of Han Mountain before, but they had never seen, heard of, or even imagined that the stone pillars that had existed for a long time would crumble right before their eyes. One of the 8 stone pillars from Puqiang tribe was destroyed. It said that this stone pillar was built by Han Mountain tribe in the past. It's incredibly sturdy and hard to shatter. How'd he do it? Puqiang tribe must have done something just now, but it's not worth it. If the stone pillar crumbles, the difficulty for the challengers of the chains of Han Mountain will increase. They won't have a place to rest. You're wrong. This won't increase the difficulty for him. But for Puqiang tribe, this is something they didn't expect at all. He's not the one who's anxious now, it's Puqiang tribe. The destruction of the stone pillars is not within the rules of the challengers of the chains of Han Mountain. No one can say anything about it, but to Puqiang tribe, unless they can rebuild their stone pillars like Han Mountain tribe did in the past, then this will be a permanent damage to Puqiang tribe. This is damage to their reputation. This is the same as attacking someone right in front of their faces. They can't say anything about it, and people will always remember it. The old woman's eyes lit up as she stood on the mountain belonging to Lake of Colors tribe. She cast a deep look at Su Ming, standing on the chains of Han Mountain in the distance. Yin Wan smiled faintly by her side. She did not speak. It was the same for Tranquil East tribe. They all looked towards the silent Puqiang Mountain. The moment Su Ming destroyed the first stone pillar, besides the elder and 2 other people, all the others stood up at the top of Puqiang Mountain. All of them had hostile expressions as they glared at Su Ming, who stood on the chains of Han Mountain. How dare this person destroy Han Mountain's stone pillars? Elder, this person is reckless. He should be punished. Elder, tribe leader, this person destroyed the stone pillar and damaged our tribe's reputation. We can't let this matter rest. Enough. The elder of Puqiang tribe frowned and spoke slowly. The moment he spoke, the area immediately fell silent. It's just a stone pillar. If it's destroyed, then so be it. We'll talk about this once he reaches this place. The elder of Puqiang tribe remained calm. His words were calm, but there was a chilling glare in his eyes. It's good if he can destroy all of them. Compared to the other 2 tribes, it'll be much more difficult for us to challenge the chains of Puqiang tribe from now on. It'll show that we're different. There was an incredibly plump middle-aged man sitting beside the elder of Puqiang tribe. The man looked like a mountain of flesh as he sat there. He smiled faintly and narrowed his eyes as he spoke. Su Ming could not hear the shock from the three tribes and the uproar from the people in the city. He stood on the chain of Han Mountain that had lost its first stone pillar with a calm expression. He was not in a hurry to continue, but was instead adjusting his breathing. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, thunder rumbled in the sky, and the rain became heavier. At that moment, rain was pouring down on Su Ming's body, causing his robes to stick to his skin. The wind also became stronger, but Su Ming was prepared for it. He did not want anyone to see his face. The long robe that covered his face was fastened tightly in place. Su Ming moved forward in the rain once again. This time he did not stop. Even if the chill under his feet became heavier, he continued moving steadily towards the stone pillar at the end of the second section of the chain. Time passed by. The instant Su Ming closed in on the second stone pillar, the crowd's gazes were trained on him, and some of them were even making guesses as to whether Su Ming would destroy the second stone pillar. Suddenly, a nonchalant voice came from within Puqiang Mountain. "Sir, please help my tribe destroy the remaining stone pillars of Han Mountain as well. I'll leave this to you. If you have extraordinary power and are even stronger, then why don't you go and break this chain of Han Mountain so that my tribe will no longer be bothered by others?" The words were soft, as if there was no strength behind them, but when they fell into the ears of those who heard them, they could not help but feel as if they were being stared at by a poisonous snake. As the words were spoken, the people in Han Mountain City immediately fell silent and looked toward Su Ming. At that moment, Nan Tian and the others were also looking at him. Nan Tian's eyes sparkled. He had a feeling that the challenge of the chains of Han Mountain, this time, was completely different from what he had seen in the past. Puqiang tribe's words have forced this person into a dead end. If I were him, what would I do? A cold sneer appeared on Xian Luan's lips. He looked at Su Ming on the chain in midair, and his smile became even colder. He could already imagine that Su would definitely hesitate at that moment. His actions and counterattack just now had turned into a joke. Su Ming looked at Puqiang Mountain coldly. He lifted his right foot and stepped on the second stone pillar. Once he sat down cross-legged, he closed his eyes as if he did not hear the voice. He pretended as if he did not hear it and rested for a while. At that moment, the people in Han Mountain City were silent. All of them were looking at Su Ming. Even the people from Lake of Colors and Tranquil East were doing the same. They were all waiting for Su Ming's answer to his words. After a moment, Su Ming opened his eyes and got up to walk onto the third section of the chain. The moment his foot landed, a mighty pressure came from the chain. That pressure was filled with a feeling of time, as if it had existed in this place for countless years, and every single time someone came, it would descend upon this place. The moment the pressure came, Su Ming immediately froze for a moment. He circulated his qi in his body, causing the pressure to dissipate by a large margin. He lifted his foot and walked forward along the chain. The further he went, the stronger the pressure became. He had only taken 5 steps when Su Ming could clearly feel that his body was rotting under the pressure. It was as if he was gradually aging. Is this the true power of the chains of Han Mountain? No wonder even those in the Transcendence realm could only look at it and not move forward. Even those in the Transcendence realm will rot away in the face of time. The third section of the chain is difficult for those who are around the 8th level of the blood solidification realm, but I can still endure it. Su Ming walked forward quietly, one step at a time. The instant he took his 15th step, the feminine voice traveled forth once again from Puqiang Mountain in the distance. Regarding the matter of troubling you, the moment the words echoed in the air, the second stone pillar behind Su Ming suddenly trembled and shattered into a large amount of shattered stones. With a muffled boom, the stone pillar crumbled. The voice immediately stopped speaking as if it had been swallowed. Right till the end, Su Ming did not open his mouth to reply to the feminine voice. Even when the second stone pillar behind him crumbled, he did not turn his head back. His footsteps did not stop either. As the chain sank down, he continued moving forward. One step at a time, he moved towards the third stone pillar, facing the pressure of time as he got closer. His silence made all the people who saw the stone pillar crumble feel fear in their hearts. They were not only shocked by the collapse of the stone pillar, but also by their guesses towards Su Ming. What's his name? He's definitely not an ordinary person. This person's personality is a little scary. I wonder what Puqiang tribe will do this time. As the crowd discussed among themselves, Su Ming walked towards the third pillar. He stood there for a moment before he continued moving forward. Booming sounds echoed in the air behind him, and the third pillar crumbled. He remained silent as he walked past the fourth and fifth pillars. Once the fifth stone pillar crumbled with a bang, Su Ming stood on the chain. His footsteps slowed down, and his breathing became slightly ragged. The feeling of time enveloped his body, giving him the misconception that he had already become an old man. The double time will end in a few hours. To everyone, it was a happy Labor Day, but to me, it was a depressing and tiring Labor Day. After posting this chapter, I'll have to go to the hospital. I'll try my best not to stop updating. I'll make sure to update twice a day. This is the best I can do. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 182. Half a day had already passed. It was already afternoon. The gentle sunlight should have brought with it heat as it shone on the ground, but it was covered by the thick, dark clouds in the sky that refused to leave. The rain was still falling heavily. As the wind howled, it swept through the sky and the mountains in waves. The wind and rain might be there, but it could not block the gazes of the people in Han Mountain City. They wore straw capes and bamboo hats as they stared at Su Ming, who stood on the chain, swaying in the wind in midair. The wind might be strong, the rain might be pouring down, but it could not affect what they were looking at. A person who had sounded Han Mountain Bell 20-something times, who had walked past all 5 stone pillars that had all collapsed, and who was walking on the 6th section of the first chain. Perhaps it would be an exaggeration to say that this person and this matter only happened once in 1,000 years, but it was definitely not enough to describe this person as someone who only appeared once in hundreds of years. The 6th section of the chain. Look, he's slowing down. There's definitely something strange about this section of the chain. It's a pity that none of the people who successfully cleared the chains of Han Mountain will reveal the secret of the chain. Most of those who didn't manage to clear the chain died. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they're all silent. It's why people are guessing why the chains of Han Mountain are so difficult. He stopped. The sounds of discussions rose into the air. Gazes fell on Su Ming through the curtain of rain. Even Nan Tian, Xianlun, Ke Jiuxi, and Lung Ying focused their gazes on him. Su Ming no longer moved forward on the swaying chain. Instead, he sat down cross-legged on the chain. His body looked as if it was glued to the chain. As the chain swayed, he swayed as well. His breathing quickened and a sharp glint appeared in his eyes. He was no longer looking at Puqiang Mountain in the distance, but at the chain beneath him. The chain had been washed away by the rain. There were even some spots where rust could be seen. It was clear that it had existed for many years, just like the rumors said. The thing that's giving me this pressure of time flowing away isn't this world. Neither is it Puqiang Mountain before me, and neither is it the stone pillars I destroyed. It's this chain. As Su Ming moved forward and the mighty pressure of time grew stronger, he could clearly sense that his life force was being sucked away bit by the chain. The speed at which his life force was being sucked away was not fast, but the further he moved, the faster it became. At that moment, Su Ming could still fight against it. After all, he had 979 blood veins. When he activated all his blood veins, he would bring a vast amount of qi to his body. The circulation of his qi was a part of his life force, and it could make up for the absorption. However, Su Ming looked at the long chain before him. I'm only at the 6th section now. There's still a long way to go. What kind of chain is this? Why does it have such shocking power? What's the use of it absorbing life force? Su Ming sat down cross-legged. He chose to sit down because there was a spot on the chain before him that had a lot of rust on it. It was also the spot that stood out the most. When the rain fell on it, it would even bring some of the rust with it. Wind howled by his ears. As he pounced on Su Ming, he brought with him a large amount of rain. Thunder also rumbled in the sky. Occasionally, lightning would appear. Beneath Su Ming was a bottomless abyss. When the rain fell into the abyss and lowered its head to see this scene, it was as if 10,000 arrows had been fired at the same time. Su Ming caught his breath and lifted his right hand. He pointed at the rusted part of the chain before him. His finger touched the rust on the chain. The moment he touched it, Su Ming's face gradually turned pale. His right index finger also turned white and blood drained from it. This was not because his blood was being sucked away, but because the life force created by the squirming of his organs, which were the driving force behind the circulation of his qi, was slowly being sucked away. Time trickled by. Su Ming had been sitting there for a long time. His right hand was still placed there, allowing his life force to be sucked away. He did not move. Gradually, the people in Han Mountain City noticed that something was off, but they could not figure out the reason. All sorts of guesses appeared in their heads. Could it be that he's exhausted? It's already the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, and he still doesn't show any signs of getting up. Looks like the sixth section of the chain is this person's end. It's a pity. It's already pretty good that he managed to clear the sixth section. After all, the chains of Han Mountain are not like the ancient bell. There's a risk of death when he tries to clear the chain. I'm guessing that he's hesitating about whether he should continue. But does he have a way out? He destroyed all the stone pillars behind him. Even if he chooses to walk back, the difficulty. Discussions spread through the wind and rain. Su Ming's actions attracted a lot of people's attention and hearts. Perhaps from the moment he destroyed the first stone pillar, he didn't choose to give up. Nan Tian looked at Su Ming on the chain and mumbled to himself. After a while, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his right hand slowly and stared at the chain. Gradually, his pupils shrank. It's just as I guessed. The chain is absorbing life force to repair itself. Before Su Ming's eyes, the spot that had obvious signs of rust was recovering, and a small part of it had even regained its normal color. The chains of Han Mountain were created by Han Mountain's ancestor. He's a person from another world, so I can understand why he came to the land of the Berserkers to support Han Mountain tribe. This would give him a place to stay. But why did he create the chains of Han Mountain? What is his real goal? Did he personally create the chains of Han Mountain, or did he find them in the land of the Berserkers, or perhaps he brought them with him? Su Ming had met Hong Kong before. In fact, it could even be said that Hong Kong's death was directly related to him. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Hong Kong died in his hands. It was precisely because of this that Su Ming made these connections. These were all guesses that few people would think about. The people in Han Mountain City and Nan Tian were not the only ones paying attention to Su Ming's pause. The three tribes were also paying attention to him. The old woman looked into the distance from Lake of Colors tribe's mountain and frowned. This person fought against Sima Xin for Han Mountain Bell. I don't believe that he can only reach the sixth section, Yin Luan said softly by her side. The old woman fell silent for a moment before she spoke languidly. He's thinking about the chain, just like how he thought about this question in the past. On the summit of Tranquil East tribe, as the elder and the others sat cross-legged and were puzzled by Su Ming's actions, Han Song-zi appeared on the stairs beside them and walked up. She did not bother with anyone, but stood at the edge of the mountain and looked at the chains of Han Mountain in the distance with a calm expression. Puqiang Mountain was still filled with dead silence. All the people's gazes were focused on Su Ming, who was sitting in the distance. Some of their gazes were dark, and some were puzzled. What is he doing? This was the thought in almost all the people's minds. Just what is the chains of Han Mountain? Su Ming lowered his head and looked at the canyons beneath him. The canyons were dark and looked like the mouth of a wild beast that was waiting for people to fall in and devour them. Su Ming knew where the end of the canyons was, but it was precisely because he knew that he had questions about the chain. After a long while, Su Ming stood up slowly and lifted his right foot. He took a step forward and walked towards a sixth stone pillar before him. The moment he stood up, a commotion broke out within Han Mountain City. When the people who had been watching Su Ming saw him finally walking out, They instantly started discussing among themselves. He's standing up. He's finally walking down after waiting for so long. But I'm curious, why did he stop just now? Su Ming took a deep breath and walked forward. His footsteps were much slower than before. With each step he took, even though he was still walking on the chain, every single time he came into contact with the chain, his life force would be sucked away. It would make him feel uncomfortable, and he would also start feeling weak. To him, he was no longer walking on the chains of Han Mountain, but was walking on a person's life and time. Each step he took was like a part of his life. This sort of feeling was difficult for other people to understand. Only as time passed by would they occasionally sigh. However, the chain of Han Mountain shortened the process of time, causing that sigh to arrive earlier. When dusk arrived, the clouds were still there, but the rain had lessened. It was no longer a storm, but a gentle breeze. Su Ming finally reached the end of the sixth chain in the afternoon. The sixth stone pillar was 100 feet away from him. At that moment, Su Ming's face was pale. He might have been circulating his qi to stimulate his life force, but as he walked, the absorption of his life force became stronger and stronger. He could no longer reach a balance. He could feel that the chain was roaring excitedly and continuously absorbing his life force to strengthen itself. Su Ming used the time it takes for an incense stick to burn to cover the distance of 100 feet. When he stepped on the sixth stone pillar, he let out a deep breath and sat down cross-legged. He looked at the seventh, eighth, and ninth sections of the chain before him, and at Puqiang Mountain, which was connected to the ninth section of the chain. This path might have seemed close, but Su Ming had a feeling that it was very far away. He could already imagine the difficulty of the last three sections. They would far surpass the previous sections. This chain, I'm somewhat familiar with it. Su Ming mumbled with his eyes closed. This feeling had been buried deep in his heart until all sorts of questions and guesses appeared in his head. When he connected them to Hong Kong, they surfaced in his head again and again. The moment Su Ming stepped on the sixth stone pillar, a huge wave of commotion broke out among the crowd in Han Mountain City. The sixth stone pillar is the start of the seventh section of chain. Will he be able to complete the seventh section of the chain? I don't think so. He's already staggering on the sixth section of the chain. It'll be difficult for him to complete the seventh section. From what I know, some of the people who challenged the chains of Han Mountain in the past failed at the seventh section. This section seems to be different from the previous ones. As the sounds of discussion rose, Su Ming remained seated. After a long while, when the sky turned completely dark and the moon appeared in the clouds, he opened his eyes. The moon is here, Su Ming mumbled. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 183. Su Ming had only circulated his qi to fight against the absorption of his life force when he walked through the first 6 sections of the chain. Other than that, he did not use any other methods. Even the branding art was only used when he destroyed the stone pillars. The rest of the time, Su Ming kept the branding art within his body. He did not wait for the moon to fall, did not activate the branding art, and rarely used fine control. The only thing he used was the power of his blood veins. After meditating in the isolation grounds of Han Mountain's ancestor for the past few months, Su Ming had discovered something unique about those who had attained completion in the blood solidification realm. If they did not want to, they would not appear on their bodies. For the first 5 sections of the chain, Su Ming only used the power of 700 blood veins. Only on the 6th section of the chain did he use all 979 blood veins. At that moment, when he faced the 7th section of the chain, Su Ming knew that he had to use some of his hidden methods, or else even if he could walk through the 7th section with just his 979 blood veins, the life force that was sucked away would affect his future plans. My body will recover faster under the moonlight. It's the same for the circulation of my blood. The production of life force will also increase. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the moon that was mostly covered by clouds. The moon was not round, but in Su Ming's eyes, that moon belonged only to him. The moonlight shone on the ground in an invisible manner and reflected off the fine raindrops that no one else could see. Drops of moonlight fused into Su Ming's body. He stood up slowly and walked towards the seventh section of the chain. He's starting on the seventh section. This section is incredibly dangerous. It's a matter of life and death. I heard that there were quite a number of people who failed on this section. It's a pity for this person. He's already used up too much of his strength on the sixth section. The seventh section might be moonlight shone on the ground at night. It might not be as clear as it was during the day, but they could still see Su Ming walking towards the seventh section of the chain. The people in Han Mountain had been paying attention to the entire day. Now, even if it was nighttime, they did not want to rest. Some of them had already chosen a place without water to sit down and watch as they discussed amongst themselves. The old woman on Lake of Colors Mountain might be tired, but she persisted in standing there. She was supported by Yin Luan and was still watching. The seventh section, the section of death. The old woman mumbled. Yin Luan remained silent, not saying anything, only watching. At that moment, Su Ming did not notice that Han Feizi, who had arrived at some point of time, was standing under a roof at the second layer of Han Mountain. She had been standing there for a long time and was looking at Su Ming's back. No one knew what she was thinking. Everyone on the summit of Tranquil East Tribe was watching. Can he walk through the seventh section? The tribe leader of Tranquil East hesitated for a moment before he looked at the elder beside him. You should ask Han Tsangzi about this. The elder of Tranquil East said slowly, his old face calm. Han Tsangzi was silent for a moment. Her voice was soft but firm. Yes. The silent crowd on Puqiang Mountain also started whispering to each other due to Su Ming's footsteps. Perhaps there's no need for him to make a move. From the looks of it, he won't be able to make it to the seventh stage. Even if it's me, it won't be difficult for me to walk through the sixth stage. We've overestimated this person. It's best if you fail. Otherwise, I'll have to wait here and waste this old man's time. The sounds of discussion were soft, but the indifference in their words was just like the berserker art practiced by Puqiang tribe. It was filled with a gloomy air of death. As the crowd conversed, only the elder of Puqiang tribe and the man who looked like a mountain of flesh did not speak. Their expressions were different. The elder of Puqiang tribe narrowed his eyes, not revealing his thoughts. As for the man who looked like a mountain of flesh, he frowned. What do you think? The elder of Puqiang tribe, the old man who was as thin as a skeleton, cast a glance at the man beside him. He destroyed the stone pillar for 3 reasons. One was to give a warning, the second was to establish his might, and the third was to cut off his own path of retreat. He placed himself in a situation where he had to clear the chain. No one would do this, but he did. From these small details, we can tell that this person has a certain degree of confidence, but it shouldn't be too great, or else he wouldn't need to cut off his own path of retreat. However, I think he should be able to clear the seventh section. A glint appeared in the eyes of the man who looked like a mountain of flesh as he spoke languidly. The rain was weak during the night, but there would occasionally be muffled rumbles of thunder. There would also be lightning slicing through the sky, illuminating the sky and earth in an instant. At that moment, a bolt of lightning appeared. In the brief moment of light, the crowd saw Su Ming, who was on the 6th stone pillar, take a step towards the 7th section of the chain. Yet the moment his foot landed, Su Ming's body came to an abrupt halt. No one else could see it, but Su Ming saw it with just one glance. The moment his foot landed on the 7th section of the chain, a person suddenly appeared. That person's face was indistinct, as if he was only an illusion. He floated before Su Ming on the chain of Han Mountain and was looking at him quietly. Su Ming! A faint voice floated into Su Ming's ears, causing his usually calm heart to tremble the moment he heard that voice. Lei Chen. Su Ming immediately recognized who that voice belonged to. The moment he said that name, the illusion was no longer indistinct. Instead, it rapidly became clear, and very soon, it appeared before Su Ming's eyes. It was a person who was unfamiliar to him, but with a pair of familiar eyes. Pain appeared on that person's face, and he stood there in a daze. There were countless fine wounds on his body, and Su Ming could see black insects squirming and crawling about in those wounds. This person looked incredibly old. His blind right eye was shining with a brutal glare at that moment, but his left eye was staring at Su Ming blankly, and there was disbelief on his face. Su Ming, is it really you? This is... The person trembled, and the pain on his face became even more intense. It was as if the pain he was enduring was something he could not bear. Su Ming also saw a circular mark at the center of his brows. That mark was pitch black, and there was black mist spreading out from it, as if it had pierced through his entire head. This is impossible. It's not you. You're not you. Who are you? The person roared and glared at Su Ming. He took a huge step forward and charged toward Su Ming. A powerful presence erupted from his body with a bang. Under that presence, Su Ming felt as if the world around him was about to freeze. A mighty pressure that brought with it the presence of death pressed down on him like a huge hand, causing Su Ming's body to tremble. Lei Chun, Su Ming mumbled. His heart raced against his chest. He did not expect that such a thing would happen in the 7th section of the Chains of Han Mountain. This is fake. I'm challenging the chains of Han Mountain. This is just an illusion in my heart. Su Ming's mind was not muddled. On the contrary, his mind was incredibly clear, but it was precisely this clarity that made his heart tremble. Just who are you? Lei Chun growled ferociously. He was already less than 100 feet away from Su Ming. A brutal presence came crashing into Su Ming's face, and a crazed killing intent also appeared in Lei Chun's right eye. Lei Chun, I'm Su Ming. Su Ming's mind was clear, but the more clear his mind was, the more fear he felt. He was not afraid of Lei Chun, neither was he afraid of the world. He was afraid of an indescribable feeling. I'm Su Ming. I'm Su Ming. Su Ming mumbled. He looked at the ferocious Lei Chun closing in on him and clenched his right hand into a fist. He hurled his fist forward, but stopped 3 inches away from him. He stopped because Su Ming had said something at that moment. Did you say that we would change? Lei Chun trembled. His bloodshot eyes were filled with brutality and lingering disbelief. There was even fear as he stared at Su Ming blankly. Impossible. I'll bury you with my own hands. Is this an illusion? Is this the illusion that's haunting me as I train? Lei Chun laughed brokenly. He pulled back his right fist and punched his own chest. A muffled sound rang in the air, and Lei Chun's body dissipated abruptly. He turned into a blur once again and gradually disappeared before Su Ming's eyes. Su Ming's breathing quickened. He had not experienced such a change when he walked through the first 6 sections of the Chains of Han Mountain. He had not even experienced such a change when Pu Qiang spoke to him in a soft voice. Yet now he could barely control his breathing. He was panting rapidly. Is this an illusion or the truth? Is this my illusion or Lei Chun's illusion? Is this my reality or Lei Chun's reality? Lei Chun's appearance has changed drastically, and his power has become stronger. Is this my imagination? Su Ming trembled as if he was in a nightmare and could not open his eyes. At that moment, Han Mountain City was in an uproar that shook the sky and earth. That uproar caused countless people to stand up once again. Lake of Colors tribe, Tranquil tribe, and even Pu Qiang tribe to be shocked. All of them could clearly see Su Ming walking forward on the 7th section of the Chains of Han Mountain under the moonlight. However, the way he walked was completely different from before. It was as if he had forgotten that this was the Chains of Han Mountain and that there was only one chain under his feet and not a flat road. At that moment, Su Ming looked as if he had lost his soul and his mind. He might be walking forward, but he looked like a walking corpse. There was even one time when he almost missed a step. This was definitely not something a person with a clear mind could do. It's like this again. I remember hearing someone say that all the people who walked on the 7th section are like this. Just what sort of secret is hidden in the 7th section? It's over. He almost missed a step just now because the wind is weak and the chains aren't swaying too much. Now the wind is blowing. The discussions that were like raging waves stopped for a moment due to the sudden appearance of a violent gust of wind. As the wind moaned, The seventh section of the chain started swaying viciously, causing the speed of the chain to also start swaying. At that moment, a bolt of lightning sliced through the sky, causing the discussions to become even louder. Because the moment the lightning lit up the sky and earth, they saw Su Ming lifting his right foot stiffly on the chain, and his foot missed. Please recommend me. To be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 184. He failed. If he failed in the seventh section, it's the same as death. He won't be able to survive. This section is so dangerous. I don't even know why he did this. Based on his performance in the sixth section, he shouldn't have ended up like this. The sounds of discussion rose into the air. Almost everyone stood up. Nan Tian and the others sucked in a deep breath with disbelief on their faces. The seventh section of the chain may be difficult, but he might be able to fight against Sir Ma for the ancient bell. But he failed just like that? I know that there's something strange about the seventh section, but I don't know the details. Just what did this person experience in the seventh section? The discussions continued, and the crowd burst into an uproar. Under the crowd's gazes, Su Ming's foot that missed did not land on the chain mountain, but landed by the side. His body tilted, and he fell headfirst. This scene stirred up an even stronger wave of shock and cries of surprise. Nan Tian and the other three did not hesitate and flew up to look for Madair. Under the roof of the second layer of Han Mountain City, Han Fei Zi's face turned pale under the veil. She did not move, but stood there and looked into the distance with a dumbfounded expression. It doesn't matter whether he's Mo, Su, or not. If he fails in the seventh section, no one can save him. Han Fei Zi lowered her head and closed her eyes. At the same time, the old woman widened her eyes on Lake of Colors Mountain. By her side, Yin Luan was momentarily stunned before disbelief appeared on her face. This scene was too sudden. They had not expected it at all. This is... Yin Luan did not know what to say for a moment. She was completely stunned. It's a pity. The old woman sighed softly and turned around, intending to leave. The entire day's worth of attention had made her incredibly tired. Yet the moment she was about to leave, she swept her gaze past Han Mountain City through the corner of her eye and suddenly froze. Her gaze swept past the place where Han Mountain Bell was. Not a single change could be detected on the bell. It still stood there quietly. The moment Su Ming missed his foot and fell from the seventh section of the chain, besides Lake of Colors Mountain, a shocking change also happened on Tranquil East Mountain. For the first time, the elder of Tranquil East stood up and took a few brisk steps to the edge of the mountain to look. He sucked in a deep breath and his eyes sparkled with shock. With his level of cultivation, even if he couldn't make it past the seventh chain, there's no way he would fail just like that. He's someone who's extremely similar to Sima Xian. How could he die just like that? Fang Shen's face was pale. From a moment he recognized Mo, Su as the challenger of the chains of Han Mountain. He had been nervous. He was not worried about Su Ming's survival, but about his son's injuries. When he saw Su Ming falling from the chain, Fang Shen swayed and took a few steps back. He knew that Mo Su was definitely going to die. No one could survive if they fell from the seventh section of the chain. Han Song Zi bit her lower lip as confusion appeared at her eyes. But almost as soon as this confusion appeared, it immediately turned into determination. He won't die. At that moment, due to the shocking sight of Su Ming's fall, even a man who looked like a mountain of flesh stood up on Puqiang Mountain. Everyone, including the elder of Puqiang tribe, instinctively took a few steps forward and went to the edge of the mountain to look down. They could vaguely see Su Ming's body falling rapidly, and he was soon devoured by the darkness, disappearing without a trace. I told you before that this person is definitely going to die. The seventh section of the chain isn't something that could be so easily cleared. He's just asking for death. It's a pity. This person sounded the bell 20-something times, but he still died on the seventh section of the chain, and no one can save him. The elder of Puqiang tribe narrowed his eyes, and a chilling glare appeared in them. He no longer looked at the canyons, but lifted his head and spoke darkly. "Send someone down and bring his corpse up later." Someone behind him immediately obeyed respectfully and quickly went down the stairs to make the arrangements. A look of disbelief appeared on the face of the man who looked like a mountain of flesh. He looked at the canyons, then looked at the seventh section of the chain, and respect appeared in his eyes. The chains of Han Mountain. The people in Han Mountain City still could not react to the sudden scene. In the midst of the buzzing discussions and uproars, most of their gazes were still fixed on the seventh section of the chain in the moonlight. The chains of Han Mountain are incredibly dangerous from the seventh section onwards. Even such a prodigy failed. How are we supposed to challenge it? Only when we reach the ninth section will we have the right to enter Freezing Sky Clan, and that's just the right. Unless we're from the three tribes and can be like Han Songzi in the past, we don't even need to clear the ninth section. Time passed by slowly. The people in Han Mountain City gradually accepted this reality. Some of them felt it was a pity, some of them mocked, some of them felt pleased, and some of them felt sentimental. Yet no matter what, everything had ended. The bell that sounded 20-something times would become a thing of the past. The chains of Han Mountain had once again gained another failure and another wrong soul. Let's go. It's over. We should go back to our lodgings and meditate to increase our blood veins. The chains of Han Mountain aren't something we can challenge. It's a pity that we don't even know his name. We didn't even see his face. Hopefully, Puqiang tribe will be able to find his corpse. As the people discussed among themselves, they gradually relaxed from the attention they had paid to the chains of Han Mountain during the day. They returned to their lodgings with a myriad of sentiments in their hearts. Kujiosi and the other three were silent in the sky. Besides Xianlin, who was laughing coldly in delight, the other three had complicated feelings in their hearts. As they looked at the chains of Han Mountain and the approaching date of Freezing Sky Clan's disciple recruitment, they felt a deep sense of helplessness. If powerful, transcendent berserkers like them were willing to have their power stagnate, then returning to their tribes and enjoying the rest of their lives in peace would be the best choice. However, they were already at the Transcendence realm, and they were still unwilling to give up. "I'll be going back first." Nan Tian sighed and wrapped his fist in his palm towards the three people beside him before he turned into a long arc and flew back to the second layer. Kujiosi and Lung Ying also wrapped their fists in their palms towards each other in silence and left. Only Xianluan remained standing in midair with a smile on his lips. "You overestimated yourself. How dare you challenge the chains of Han Mountain? Mo Su, you asked for your own death." Xianlun laughed coldly and moved. He did not return to his lodgings, but flew towards Puqiang Mountain. He wanted to see whether Mo Su's face would still be there if his corpse was brought up. He had a guess in his heart, and he wanted to verify it. Under the eaves of the second layer of Han Mountain City, Han Fei Zi's eyelashes fluttered. She opened her eyes and took a step forward silently. A white cloud appeared under her feet and lifted her up as she flew towards Lake of Colors Mountain. She was not curious about the face of the dead loser. Neither was she curious about his identity, because he was dead. To her, it did not matter whether this person was Mo Su or not. It was no longer important. If he's Mo Su, then I'll have to find another companion. It's a pity. Han Fei Zi sighed softly and flew into the distance on the white cloud. Yet at that moment, as tranquil East Mountain fell into silence, Puqiang Mountain was filled with schadenfreude, and there were even people who went to search for Su Ming's corpse. Suddenly, an old man appeared among the dispersing crowd in Han Mountain City. There was a boy by his side. The boy looked at the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th pillars that were still standing under the chain of Han Mountain, connected to Puqiang Mountain, with a dumbfounded expression filled with uncertainty and bewilderment. He whispered something into the old man's ear. The old man was stunned and lifted his head swiftly to look at the chain of Han Mountain. Everyone, the more the old man looked at it, the brighter his eyes became, but he was still hesitant. After a moment of hesitation, He spoke to the people beside him in a low voice. Yet no one paid any attention to his words. Thunder rumbled in the sky, lightning flashed, and the rain became heavier. No matter how heavy the rain was during the day, there were still people who stood outside to look at the chains of Han Mountain. Yet now, when the rain became slightly heavier, there were already people who walked briskly back to their lodgings. Everyone, the pillars supporting the chains, are still there, the old man shouted. His words did not travel too far. Most of the people who heard him ignored him at first, but soon a shudder ran through their bodies and they turned their heads around to look. The stone pillars were still standing under the chain of Han Mountain, connected to Puqiang Mountain. What? The stone pillars are still here. Whenever a person fails to challenge the chains of Han Mountain, the stone pillars will descend immediately. This isn't something the three tribes can control. This is the mystery of the chains of Han Mountain. Why are they still here? Could it be? Could it be? The old man and the boy were not the only ones who noticed this. Some of the other places in Han Mountain City gradually saw this as well. Very soon, discussions and uproars spread through the city. After a moment, almost all the people who heard it stopped moving and looked towards the direction of the sound. That's right, the stone pillars didn't descend. Could it be that he's not dead? Cries of surprise reverberated in the air and eventually fused together, stirring up a storm that swept through Han Mountain City, causing the people who had already returned to their houses to be stunned once they heard it. They immediately walked out and listened to the cries of surprise around them. When they looked at the towering pillars of Han Mountain, disbelief appeared on their faces. Could it be that he's really not dead? Nan Tian came to an abrupt halt in midair and turned his head around. Shock appeared on his face. He was not the only one. Lung Ying and Ku Jiuxi also stopped in midair and looked over. Xinluan was also about to head to Puqiang Mountain with a cold sneer on his face. But when he heard the cries of surprise coming from Han Mountain City, he shuddered and immediately turned around to look. That's impossible. At that moment, Han Mountain City was not the only ones who were in an uproar. The elder, the man who looked like a mountain of flesh on Puqiang Mountain, and all the people behind them all had their expressions drastically change. They had also noticed this. Han Fei Zi stood on the white cloud. The cloud under her feet stopped for a moment, and she turned her head around to look at the canyons under the chain of Han Mountain. He's still alive? He's still alive? And the challenge of the chains of Han Mountain hasn't ended yet? On Tranquil East Mountain, the elder of Tranquil East sucked in a sharp breath. A rare look of disbelief appeared on his old face. Han Song Zi stood not too far away. A hint of red appeared on her pale face. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Qidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 185. A glint appeared in the old woman's dark eyes as she stood on Lake of Colors Mountain. She looked at Han Mountain Bell, then at the stone pillars under the chains of Han Mountain that countless people were staring at in shock. There was disbelief on Yin Luan's face as she stood by the old woman's side. She had the same guess as the others. Could it be that he really didn't die? Or else why wouldn't the stone pillars fall? The old woman fell silent. She looked at the stone pillars and frowned. This was something that she could not understand, which was something that was rarely seen on her. Due to the dark clouds covering the sky, it was difficult for moonlight to shine down completely. Even though the land was not so dark that one could not see their own fingers, it was still a little dark and blurry. They could still see the chains of Han Mountain swaying in the wind in midair. The Han Mountain pillars still stood tall and did not show any signs of sinking. The sound of heavy breathing gradually grew louder in Han Mountain City. All the people, including those who had already left, were also watching with rapt attention. An indescribable feeling, like the calm before the storm, pressed down on the entire Han Mountain. All the people were waiting at the end of their gazes, waiting for the person who might truly appear under the swaying chains. Su Ming did not know that there were so many people waiting for him to appear. He did not even know that he had missed his footing. He was different from what the people saw. At that moment, Su Ming's mind was not muddled. His mind was clear, but what he saw was completely different from what the others saw. He still saw the chain of Han Mountain swaying in the wind. He still saw himself with half of his foot on the seventh section of the chain. He saw Lei Chen's shadow shattering and disappearing before him. That devastating laughter made Su Ming's heart tremble. He could not tell whether this was his imagination or Lei Chen's, whether this was real or fake. Even if he knew that all of this was just his imagination, Lei Chen's face and his words still made Su Ming's entire body ache uncontrollably. He buried me with his own hands, Su Ming mumbled. He remained silent for a long, long time. He could not hear the thunder in the sky, could not hear the wind and rain howling, could not see the lightning. He looked at the chain of Han Mountain. Suddenly, the chain was no longer connected horizontally in his eyes, but had become vertical. It was as if the world had been turned upside down. Su Ming quietly lifted his foot and walked forward. But when he felt that he had only taken 10 steps forward, fog gathered before him once again, and Su Ming shuddered. The fog quickly condensed and eventually turned into the figure of a man. This person did not have a right arm and wore a green robe. He stood there in a daze, as if he did not know why he had appeared here. His appearance was extraordinary, and after a brief moment of confusion, his eyes shone with a sharpness like that of a sword. However, once he saw Su Ming, that fierceness turned into surprise. Then he frowned, and a dark look appeared on his face. Bei Ling, Su Ming mumbled. He stared blankly at the obviously aged man before him. An indescribable feeling grew in his heart. Sir, who are you? Why did you bring me here? Your presence. Have we met before? Bei Ling hesitated for a moment. The moment he saw the person before him, he felt an incredibly familiar feeling. That feeling was as if it was carved into his bones, as if it had existed for a long time. I am Su Ming. Su Ming remained silent for a long while before he spoke in a low voice. The moment he heard Su Ming's name, a shudder ran through Bei Ling's body. He glared at Su Ming with disbelief and disbelief on his face. It was as if those two words had left an impression on him that he would never be able to forget. Bei Ling fell silent. Su Ming did not speak either. He could not tell whether this was real or fake. Confusion filled every corner of his body. He did not know how much time had passed before Bei Ling suddenly laughed coldly. He cast a deep look at Su Ming, and a cold glint appeared in his eyes. Since when did the great Miao Man tribe start using the illusion berserker art? Why didn't you turn to other people? Instead, you turned into Su Ming, this dead person. I don't care which ancestor Miao Man tribe you are, but you shouldn't have turned into Su Ming. Su Ming is a member of my tribe. He is the heroic soul of Dark Mountain. You don't have the right to turn into him. Bei Ling's last sentence was practically a roar. His face was filled with anger and sorrow. It was as if a scar that had been sealed for a long time had been torn open, causing Bei Ling to lift his left hand swiftly. In an instant, the illusion of a gigantic bow appeared behind him. That bow exuded a presence that could destroy the sky and earth. The moment it appeared, as if an invisible person had drawn the bow, wisps of black mist seeped out from Bei Ling's body and gathered on the bow, turning into a black mist arrow. The moment the bow was drawn, the arrow let out a loud buzzing sound and charged toward Su Ming. Bei Ling, big brother, Su Ming mumbled. His mind was clear. He knew that this was fake. But even if it was fake, he still wanted to see whether the elder would appear after Bei Ling, and whether the woman he had broken his promise with would appear. The arrow that was charging towards Su Ming stopped abruptly before him, just like Lei Chen's punch. It stopped in its tracks. What? What did you just say? The sorrow on Bei Ling's face deepened. He looked at Su Ming, and after a long while, he closed his eyes. Thank you for letting me see Su Ming again. I don't care what you're trying to achieve by casting the illusion of the berserker art. I thank you for today. After a while, Bei Ling opened his eyes. His face had calmed down, and there was a gentle look in his eyes. He looked at Su Ming as if he was looking at his own little brother. Su Ming, take care. Bei Ling turned around abruptly. There seemed to be tears in his eyes. His body gradually walked into the distance, as if he was about to disappear from the world. Big Brother Bei Ling, is Chun Xian all right? At that moment, Su Ming forgot to continuously remind himself that all of this was fake. He looked at Bei Ling walking away and opened his mouth to ask instinctively. Bei Ling shuddered and stopped for a moment before he turned around abruptly. His breathing quickened as he stared at Su Ming. There was confusion and uncertainty on his face. Su Ming looked at Bei Ling and reached his right hand into his bosom. When he brought it out, there was a black stone in his hand. That stone was the one he left behind after Dark Mountain's statue of the god of Berserkers shattered. Even if all of this is fake, even if it's not real, even if that's the case, it doesn't matter. Su Ming lifted his head and held the stone in his hand so that Bei Ling could see it. The moment he saw the stone, Bei Ling trembled furiously. Shock appeared on his face as he stared at Su Ming blankly. "You are really Su Ming, I am," Su Ming said bitterly. Bei Ling suddenly laughed out loud. His laughter was filled with desolation, filled with a pain that Su Ming did not understand. "If you're Su Ming, why didn't you come back? Do you know how long we've waited for you? How long have we waited for you?" Su Ming, you're not him." There was sadness on Bei Ling's face. He turned around and gradually left as he laughed forlornly. He disappeared from the chains of Han Mountain and disappeared from Su Ming's sight. When Bei Ling disappeared, Su Ming stood there with tears falling from the corners of his eyes. It had been a long time since he cried. At that moment, tears flowed down his cheeks and fell on the chains of Han Mountain. They fell into the canyons and disappeared without a trace. Chains of Han Mountain. Just what sort of chain are you? Why did this happen? Are you trying to tell me something? Su Ming closed his eyes and only opened them after a long while. He walked forward quietly. Walking on the chain was no longer important. Su Ming did not want to guess whether it was real or fake. He did not even care whether it was dangerous. He just wanted to see who else he could see as he walked on the chain. He walked forward one step at a time. When Su Ming walked through almost half of the seventh section of the chain, he saw Wu La, the head of the guards, Shan Hen, until he saw the back of a white-haired old man appear in the fog before him. "Elder," Su Ming's heart clenched in pain. The moment the old man turned around and he was about to see him clearly, his vision suddenly blurred. The whine of a sword echoed in his head. At the same time, there were also waves of anxious divine thoughts crashing into his mind. Those divine thoughts came from He-Feng, who had been startled awake by the threat of death. Master, wake up. Master, why you? If you don't wake up, we're going to die together. Damn you, you bastard. Why aren't you waking up? If you're going to die, at least let me go first." He-Feng looked as if he had gone mad as his divine thoughts roared anxiously. The qi in Su Ming's body did not circulate, as if it was being suppressed. However, the small virescent sword hidden within the open path of blood was letting out a buzzing sound that only he could hear. That buzzing sound grew stronger, and it stimulated Su Ming's mind, causing him to snap out of his trance in the midst of the danger of falling. At the instant he woke up, a life-threatening sense of danger rose in his heart and washed away everything before him. It was as if the world he saw had shattered into pieces. Once it disappeared, what appeared before Su Ming was endless darkness and his falling body. He was truly awake now. The moment he regained his senses, Su Ming suddenly understood. It did not matter whether what he saw was real or fake. In truth, this was the scene that remained in his mind when he was walking on the seventh section of the chain and when he fell from the chain. Did I fail? I still haven't seen the elder. Su Ming's body continued descending. The canyon was very long. He could feel the wind howling around him, and his body was rapidly getting closer to the bottom. He-Feng was roaring in panic and fear. The sword whines were like thunder echoing in his head. No wonder those who fail to challenge the chain rarely survive. The chains of Han Mountain are very strange. They can suppress the movement of qi and make a person lose consciousness. The only outcome for them is death. It's clear that it's difficult for others to save them because the suppression of qi is targeted at everyone. Besides Han Feizi's preparations in the past, He Feng also relied on luck. Su Ming calmed down and continued falling. He might not know how far he was from the bottom, but the force of impact and the growing sense of danger was enough to tell Su Ming that his time of death was rapidly approaching. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 186. Master, you're finally awake. There was a hint of bitterness in He Feng's voice. He did not know how to express it. He had been woken up by the threat of death and immediately noticed that there was something wrong with Su Ming. It was as if he had lost his soul. His body continued falling, and before long, he would fall and be crushed to pieces. Su Ming had lost his soul, so it was only natural that he did not know fear. However, He Feng was clear-headed. He watched as Su Ming's body fell and watched as he was about to die with Su Ming. He could not do anything about it. He could not control Su Ming's body, and he did not even dare leave it. The power that suppressed his chi from the outside world would also deal devastating damage to him. He was truly afraid. The torment of being unable to do anything about death drove him mad. He called out to Su Ming anxiously, and in his despair, he even started cursing him without hiding anything. Yet when he saw Su Ming waking up, He Feng was suddenly afraid. He was no longer afraid of death, but the consequences of Su Ming hearing his words just now. Master? What did you hear just now? I was just worried about your safety. He Feng quickly explained himself carefully, afraid that Su Ming would cause trouble for him. Su Ming ignored He Feng. His body was falling rapidly, and all sorts of thoughts flashed through his head. Eventually, a dark glint appeared in his eyes, and immediately, the soles of the wings of the moon spread out from his body. Yet the moment they appeared, a huge pressure immediately came crashing down on Su Ming, imprisoning the soles of the wings of the moon within his body. They could not leave. I can't circulate my chi, and the soles of the wings of the moon can't leave my body either. This is the only way. Su Ming activated the branding art in his head. A green light flashed at the center of his brows, and the small virescent sword charged out. The small sword was slightly uncomfortable with the pressure in the place. It swayed, as if it could not withstand the pressure. But once Su Ming gathered all his strength on it with the branding art, the sword immediately steadied itself. In a flash, it charged towards the bottom of Su Ming's feet and dragged him upwards, causing him to step on it. With that one step, the force of Su Ming's fall seemed to be compressed. Besides the small sword, the rest of the force was gathered in his body. Banging sounds reverberated in the air. Su Ming's face immediately turned pale, and he coughed out a mouthful of blood. The small sword also sank several hundreds of feet before gradually coming to a stop. Su Ming's breathing quickened as he stood on the small sword. He lifted his head abruptly and looked at the dark sky above him. He saw lightning slicing through the sky, and, as the light disappeared, he saw the faintly discernible swaying iron chain. The chain isn't over yet, Su Ming mumbled. He was wearing a black robe. He covered his head with the robe that had been blown away by the wind when he fell. The long robe on his feet was loose enough to cover the small virescent sword. With a single thought, the small virescent sword slowly rose into the air and dragged Su Ming upwards from the depths of the canyon. Su Ming was back. At that moment, time trickled by in Han Mountain City. No one knew how much time had passed. Thunder would occasionally rumble in the sky, and lightning would slice through the sky. As it illuminated the area, it also illuminated the chain where the people's gazes met. Similarly, the faces of the people standing in Han Mountain City who were waiting could also be seen clearly. No one showed any signs of impatience. In truth, all of them knew clearly in their hearts that there was only one explanation for the strange change in the chains of Han Mountain not sinking. The challenge of the chains of Han Mountain had not ended. The challenger had not failed. However, even though they knew it clearly, the things that happened on that day still made them hesitate. Is he really not dead? It's been a long time. If he's not dead, why hasn't he appeared? Puqiang tribe should have already sent people down to search for his corpse. I wonder what the results are. The whispers of discussion broke the silence. Too much time had passed. Even if they knew the reason why the stone pillars did not sink, their hesitation still grew stronger as time passed. On Tranquil East Mountain, the elder of Tranquil East tribe had a grave expression on his face. He stood at the edge of the mountain and watched intently. Behind him, Fang Shun and Han Songzi, who was not too far away, did the same. This has never happened. Could it be that he's really not dead? Time trickled by, and soon an hour went by. This hour would usually pass by very quickly for the people, but now, to the people, this hour felt as if it had been stretched out several times longer. On Puqiang Mountain, the thin elder took a deep breath. The grave expression on his face gradually became gentler. It's been more than an hour. Perhaps something happened to the chains of Han Mountain, and not that person, not dead. What do you think? The elder of Puqiang tribe's final words were directed towards the man who looked like a mountain of flesh by his side. The man hesitated for a moment. He looked at the sky, then at the canyons, and said unhurriedly, "It's indeed been a little long. There's a high possibility that this person is already dead. The tribe members we sent down to investigate should also." Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly shuddered and stared straight into the canyons. He saw it. He was not the only one. The elder of Puqiang tribe's expression also changed drastically. There seemed to be a raging storm contained within his thin body, as if it was about to erupt. He stared into the canyons. He saw it. Besides the two of them, the other people on Puqiang Mountain were also shocked. When they looked towards the canyons, their expressions changed drastically because of what they saw. They saw it. Lightning flashed in the sky at that moment. The instant the light from the lightning illuminated the sky and earth, a person in black robes rose slowly from the canyons of Puqiang Mountain. Cries of surprise rose from Han Mountain. On Tranquil East Mountain, the elder of Tranquil East took a deep breath. A fierce glint appeared in his eyes, and with a look of disbelief, he looked at the canyons. He too saw it. The tribe leader of Tranquil East, Fang Shun, and Han Songzi had different expressions on their faces. Fang Shun's face was filled with shock, while Han Songzi let out a huge sigh of relief. They too saw it. On Lake of Colors Mountain, the old woman instinctively clenched and unclenched her right hand, then clenched it again. She repeated this several times, but her expression remained calm, as if even if she saw the shocking sight in the canyons, she would not be too affected. When Yin Luan saw the sight in the canyons, she was momentarily stunned. A bright light appeared in her eyes. She was just about to say something when she suddenly noticed the old woman's right hand, and a thought appeared in her heart. Everyone said that Yin Luan's power surpassed that of the elder. This was true, but only she knew just how powerful the elder of Lake of Colors Mountain was. She also knew that the elder had a habit of clenching and unclenching her right hand many times like this when she was hesitating. Why is the elder hesitating? Yin Luan could not understand it. What was happening right now had nothing to do with Lake of Colors tribe. What was it that would make the elder hesitate? Besides the people from the three tribes, all the people in Han Mountain City also saw the sight in the canyons. Once they saw it, a shocking uproar broke out among the crowd. The waves of sound rose and fell, as if they could fight against the thunder in the sky. He really didn't die. It's him. He came out. Just what level of cultivation does he have? He actually came out from the canyons. No one has ever survived after falling for so long. This person really didn't die, and he even came out from the canyons. Nan Tian sucked in a deep breath. For the first time, respect appeared in his eyes. He looked at the canyons and mumbled. Lung Ying and Ku Jiosi's expressions also changed when they saw the canyons. Just like Nan Tian, respect rose in their hearts. They should respect powerful berserkers, especially those who could walk out from the canyons. Han Fei Zi stood on the white cloud in midair. A faint smile appeared on her face, covered by the veil. Her eyes were much brighter than before. Only Xinluan's face was as dark as ice. He clenched his fists and lowered his head, hiding away the jealousy and killing intent in his eyes. Su Ming slowly rose from the canyons, stepping on the small virescent sword covered by his robes. He appeared in the sky and earth, right before all the people's eyes. After experiencing all this, it could be said that he was the true center of attention. Everyone's hearts were stirred. Even those who had looked down on him previously had now disappeared. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he had crawled out from the depths of death. He had managed to walk out from the canyons. This matter was bound to spread through Han Mountain. It was bound to be remembered even after hundreds of years had passed. It was bound to be said that every single time someone challenged the chains of Han Mountain in the future, the people who had been paying attention would talk about what happened on this day. It was also bound to be said that Su Ming's challenge of the chains of Han Mountain this time would be unprecedented. It would shake Han Mountain, and he would reach the level of shock he wanted. As he floated upwards, when Su Ming stood on the same level as the seventh section of the chain, an even louder cry and uproar broke out within Han Mountain City. All sorts of voices echoed in the air, and Su Ming could hear them. Will he continue to walk on? Just what does he look like? What's his name? He's bound to be chosen as a disciple by Freezing Sky Clan. Even if he doesn't continue, there's a high possibility that he'll be brought into Freezing Sky Clan. In the midst of the buzzing discussions, Su Ming stood beside the seventh section of the chain. He did not look at Puqiang Mountain, which was connected to the chain, but lifted his foot and stepped on the chain. The moment he stepped on the same chain for the second time, the sounds of discussions within Han Mountain City reached their peak. The people from the three tribes also looked towards him nervously from their respective mountains. The small virescent sword disappeared under Su Ming's feet the moment he took a step forward. Su Ming stood on the seventh section of the chain and let out a deep breath against the mountain breeze. Let's continue with the chains of Han Mountain. Su Ming mumbled. He lifted his right foot swiftly and took a step forward on the chain. As he moved, the 6 stone pillars behind him crumbled with a bang and turned into an endless amount of shattered stones that fell down. Even at that moment, Su Ming did not forget what Puqiang tribe had asked of him. Elder, please appear. Su Ming walked forward. His footsteps were not quick. He did not want to leave so soon. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 187. Every single one of Su Ming's actions had affected the hearts of many people who were paying attention to him after he had gone through the transition from death to life for an entire day. They looked at Su Ming walking up the seventh section of the chain and at the figure in the moonlight. For some unknown reason, that person seemed to be exuding a lonely air as he stood in midair. That feeling was very faint, but it would be different depending on the person looking at it. Elder, please appear. Su Ming walked slowly. He longed to see the elder, even if it was just a glance. Before Su Ming, Puqiang Mountain, which was behind the 8th and 9th sections of the chain, fell silent for a moment before the feminine voice that the people had heard before traveled forth. Sir, you've already failed. Why do you continue? Even if you continue, you will still fail in the end. The challenge of the chains of Han Mountain has ended. The feminine voice traveled forth slowly and filled the entire area. The moment the voice traveled forth, the people in Han Mountain City immediately fell silent. Even Nantian and the others frowned, but once they looked at Puqiang Mountain, they did not say anything. Su Ming ignored them and continued moving forward silently. As he stepped on the chain, he looked at the end of the 6th section of the chain, and a hint of desire that was hidden deeply appeared in his eyes. Elder, Elder, Su Ming mumbled. He did not stop moving. At that moment, his heart trembled. He saw something that no one else could see. The black fog that appeared on the section of the chain. That fog gathered together and slowly turned into the back of an old man. That back was familiar to Su Ming, and it made excitement appear in his eyes. Even though he knew it was fake, Su Ming was still satisfied that he could see the elder. The challenge of the chains of Han Mountain has ended. Sir, you failed. You're already lucky that you didn't die. I advise you to leave quickly. If you continue, you'll be seen as challenging Puqiang tribe's might. The feminine voice echoed in the air once again. That voice was soft, but there was a hint of malice in it. The voice from Puqiang tribe made Han Mountain City fall into complete silence. Almost everyone was silent. When faced with Puqiang tribe, one of the three owners of Han Mountain City, the people who came to the city had no power to fight back. They were not the ones who made the rules. Even if they wanted to change it, it was not up to them. Even if this went against the original intentions of the chains of Han Mountain, Su Ming had still failed once. Even if this failure was not acknowledged by the chains of Han Mountain and he had walked out of the canyons once again. However, if Puqiang tribe relied on this, it would be difficult for others to say anything, nor would they have the right to say anything. Perhaps Nantian had some qualifications, but he chose to remain silent. Kujiosi hesitated for a moment before sighing in his heart. He knew that this was Han Mountain City, a city that belonged to Puqiang. Outsiders did not have the right to object. Lung Ying furrowed his brows, but he also remained silent. Xianlun unclenched his fists as he stood in the sky in the distance. Delight appeared in his eyes. He hoped that Su Ming would refuse. If that was the case, then he would be fighting against Puqiang. He would not even need to do anything to get rid of Puqiang. Everyone was silent. Han Fei Zi lowered her head. No one knew what she was thinking. After Lake of Colors Peak and Tranquil East Peak heard the feminine voice from Puqiang Mountain, they also fell silent. The world suddenly fell silent. Even the lightning didn't appear at this moment. Gazes fell upon Su Ming from within Han Mountain City. The owners of those gazes wanted to know what Su Ming would choose. Yet what they did not know was that Su Ming no longer had the time to bother with the feminine voice. His vision was completely occupied by the old man, formed by the fog. He trembled and tears fell from his eyes once again. As he looked at the old man who was slowly turning around and looking at him, Su Ming's voice became hoarse. "Elder." That old man was Dark Mountain Tribe's elder, Mo Sang. He was still dressed in the same clothes as the last time Su Ming saw him. When he saw Su Ming, there was a slightly dazed and complicated look on his face. He stared at Su Ming blankly, at the child he had raised since he was young. He seemed to want to say something, but no sound came out of his mouth. The dazed and complicated look in his eyes was gradually replaced by gentleness and kindness. There was even a hint of praise in his eyes. It was as if he was very, very satisfied with the current Su Ming. Su Ming looked at the elder, and tears fell from his eyes. No matter how much he grew up, how much he learned to be aloof and lonely, how many people he killed, how many things he went through, all of it disappeared the moment he saw the elder. He seemed to still be the carefree child at the foot of Dark Mountain. He had Xiao Hong as his companion, the elder's love, waiting for the rainy day to collect dark dragon saliva, waiting for the bonfire to be lit in the tribe, and laughing happily around the elder. At that time, the sky was very blue and the clouds were very white, but he could not seem to remember it. "Elder, I miss home." Su Ming walked forward. He wanted to see the elder at a closer distance. It might be an illusion, but Su Ming did not care. The elder looked at Su Ming, and the gentleness in his eyes made Su Ming's heart tremble. He could not help but remember the happy moments when he was still a teenager. As he got closer, when Su Ming stood before the elder formed from the fog, more tears fell from his eyes. He looked at the white-haired old man before him, at the clothes he wore that were the same as in his memories, and at him, Su Ming forced out a smile. "Elder, Su has grown up. Look, I'm much taller now." The elder looked at Su Ming with a smile and seemed to sigh softly. The gentleness in his eyes was once again replaced by a complicated look. Within that complicated look was a hint of pity and a hint of a deeper meaning that Su Ming could not understand. Eventually, Su Ming saw a hint of resolution on the elder's face. He saw a strange light suddenly appear in the elder's eyes. That light shone in Su Ming's head, causing a bang to go off in his head, as if it was trembling. At the same time, he heard the voice that only existed in his memories clearly. "Su Ming, you." Su Ming's body trembled, But the moment the voice appeared, and before he could finish listening to it, the elder's body suddenly trembled and disappeared. The fog seemed to have been scattered by a huge force behind him, causing everything to disappear before Su Ming's eyes. The fog disappeared, the elder disappeared, and even the voice became faint and lingering, causing Su Ming to be unable to hear it clearly. All of this was not because Su Ming was stepping on air, neither was it because there was something wrong with the chains of Han Mountain. It was because at that moment, a powerful force was charging towards him. The thing that brought forth that powerful force was a black bone ring. With a whistle, that bone ring flew out from Puqiang Mountain and charged towards Su Ming. It was the ring that had shaken the chains of Han Mountain, causing the illusions that were reflected in Su Ming's eyes on the chains to disappear. Su Ming's eyes instantly turned red. He had originally learned how to be calm and not be impulsive, but there were some things that he could not tolerate, that he absolutely could not tolerate. His elder was one of those things. The incoming bone ring scattered the fog formed by the elder and also scattered the beautiful and happy memories he had when he was a teenager that had appeared in Su Ming's heart. This scene was similar to the gaze he had when he saw Dark Mountain being crushed by a giant hand when he walked down the path of blood leading to Han Mountain's ancestors' isolation grounds. The bone ring and its master had crossed the line that Su Ming could not allow others to touch, and it had made him descend into madness. A low roar that had not left Su Ming's mouth for a long time suddenly reverberated through the sky and earth. It seemed to have fused together with the thunder in the sky, as if his anger was the same as the anger of the heavens. As he roared, Su Ming lifted his head. The shadow of the blood-red moon appeared in his eyes. As he faced the bone ring charging towards him, Su Ming took a huge step forward. The qi in his body surged forth, and at the same time a shocking power erupted forth. A large amount of moonlight also descended upon him. He even activated the branding art. Green light shone at the center of his brows, and the small virescent sword turned into a ray of green light. It gathered all the power of Su Ming's blood veins, the shadow of the blood-red moon, and the branding art. That green light shone. The light surged into the sky. There was no lightning, but at that moment, the sky and earth were illuminated by the green light. As thunder rumbled, the green light charged towards the incoming bone ring, and the moment it crashed into it, it sliced through it. A loud bang rang out. The sky and earth shook, and the earth trembled. Su Ming coughed out a mouthful of blood and took a few steps back. Yet with every step he took, he would land accurately on the chain. The green light dissipated and tumbled backwards, fusing into Su Ming's body. The moment the green light appeared until it disappeared, it only lasted for an instant. No one could see what it was. Before Su Ming, the black bone ring remained unmoving. A thin crack appeared on it, and in an instant, it shattered into two halves and fell into the canyons. At that moment, the man who looked like a mountain of flesh on Puqiang Mountain shuddered violently and coughed out a huge mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale, and the fat on his body shrunk by a large amount. "How dare you? I've already warned you. If you continue, then you'll be challenging Puqiang Mountain. I'll give you one last chance. Retreat immediately. You've failed." The man who looked like a mountain of flesh spoke in a weak and venomous voice. "I don't agree." Su Ming wiped off the blood at the corner of his mouth and looked at Puqiang Mountain coldly. He had already regained his composure. "You don't agree? What right do you have to disagree? You're just an outsider in Han Mountain. The three tribes are in charge of Han Mountain. If you don't retreat within the span of 3 breaths, then don't even think about leaving." The one who spoke was not the man who looked like a mountain of flesh, but an old man standing beside the elder of Puqiang tribe. That old man had an arrogant look on his face, and there was disdain in his cold sneer. The moment his words left his mouth, the man who looked like a mountain of flesh immediately frowned. He looked as if he wanted to say something, but he did not. As for the elder of Puqiang tribe, he still did not say a single word, but the coldness in his eyes revealed his true intentions. Su Ming remained silent. Some of the people in Han Mountain City had already clenched their fists. They were also outsiders of Han Mountain. Even if they had lived in Han Mountain City for many years, this city belonged to the three tribes. Those who were not part of the three tribes were all outsiders. Yet they indeed did not have the right to refute. Yet more people's gazes as they looked at Puqiang Mountain turned cold. A sense of acknowledgement towards Su Ming slowly rose within them, because they were all outsiders. Nan Tian, Ke Jiusi, and Lung Ying also turned their cold gazes towards Puqiang Mountain when they heard those words, but they still chose to remain silent. This old one, do I have the qualifications? If you like this work, then please come to Start Point and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 188. As all the people in Han Mountain City fell silent, an old voice suddenly traveled forth from Lake of Colors Mountain. That voice was slightly weak, but the moment it appeared, it immediately broke the silence that was created by the silence. When everyone's gazes turned towards Lake of Colors Peak, the majority of them were unfamiliar with this voice that had suddenly appeared. They only knew that this voice came from Lake of Colors Peak, but they did not know who the person who had uttered this voice was. However, there were still people who knew. The expressions of those who recognized the owner of the voice immediately changed. Shock appeared on their faces as they looked towards Lake of Colors Mountain. Nan Tian shuddered. He had naturally recognized the owner of the voice and immediately looked towards the direction of the voice. Lung Ying also took a deep breath and looked towards Lake of Colors Mountain. Ke Jiusi's heart was definitely the most shaken out of all the outsiders. He knew who the person who spoke was, and because he was once a guest in Lake of Colors Mountain, he knew a secret that almost no one else knew about. It was about the terrifying aspects of the Elder of Lake of Colors, who had been ignored in the rumors that Lake of Colors Mountain respected the tribe leader. Lake of Colors, Elder. On Lake of Colors Mountain, Yen Luan's expression immediately changed. She looked at the old woman by her side. She did not expect that the old woman would say such words at this moment. This would undoubtedly offend Puqiang tribe. In fact, the previous restoration would also be completely broken because of this. Sometimes, killing for the sake of profit might be a small matter for both tribes. But at this moment, before all the people in Han Mountain City, this one sentence was enough to create a wound that would be difficult to heal. She suddenly understood why the elder's right hand had clenched and unclenched so many times previously. She now had an answer to her puzzled hesitation. Could it be that the elder knew that this would happen? That's why she was hesitating. Yen Luan took a deep breath and lowered her head. The elder's words echoed in the air, causing the people in Han Mountain City to feel as if they were about to explode in the midst of their silence. But they remained silent. On Puqiang Mountain, the expression of the man, who looked like a mountain of flesh, changed drastically. The ghastly old man who had spoken by his side was momentarily stunned and found himself speechless for a long time. The elder of Puqiang tribe frowned, and anger appeared in his eyes. He stood up slowly and looked towards Lake of Colors Mountain. Of course, the elder of Lake of Colors has the right to do so. After a long while, he spoke slowly. The moment his words left his mouth, those in Han Mountain City who did not know the identity of the person who had spoken just now were immediately shocked and aghast. However, strangely enough, they did not discuss this matter. Instead, they turned their shock into a force that was about to erupt in the midst of their silence. I do not agree to this. The elder of Lake of Colors Berserker, the old woman with an increasingly tired expression, spoke slowly. The chief of Lake of Colors tribe, Yen Luan, also disagrees with this. Yen Luan gritted her teeth and said, "The words of the tribe leader and the elder were the strongest will in the tribe. Their words represented Lake of Colors tribe's attitude. The meaning behind their words was so great that it could shake Han Mountain. Good. The entire Puqiang tribe was shaken. Numerous tribe members' expressions changed, and anger appeared on their faces. The elder of Puqiang tribe laughed out of extreme anger on the mountain, and his laughter was incredibly dark. The old man who had spoken previously by his side felt his heart tremble. He had a feeling that all of this was related to his words. When a man who looked like a mountain of flesh looked at him coldly, that feeling became even stronger. The man who looked like a mountain of flesh took a deep breath and stood beside the elder of Puqiang tribe. He glared at Lake of Colors Mountain sinisterly and was about to speak. Yet at that moment, an old laugh came from Tranquil East Mountain. I also do not agree to this. Fang Shun, tribe leader of Tranquil East tribe, also does not agree to this. Right after the elder of Tranquil East tribe spoke, Fang Shun's stern voice also rose into the air. Han Tsangzi, disciple of Freezing Sky Clan and tribe member of Tranquil East tribe, also does not agree to this. Han Tsangzi's voice had always been gentle, but at that moment, there was determination in that gentle voice. The man who looked like a mountain of flesh staggered on Puqiang Mountain. His expression changed rapidly. At that moment, the tribe members of Puqiang tribe no longer looked angry, but were feeling incredibly uneasy. They had a feeling that something big was about to happen. The elder of Puqiang tribe's face turned pale. The anger in his eyes grew stronger. He was just about to speak when suddenly voices came from Han Mountain City once again. I, Yanfei of Lake of Colors tribe, do not agree to Puqiang tribe's decision. I, Nan Tian of Transcendence Realm from Han Mountain City, do not agree to this. I, Kujiosi of Transcendence Realm from Han Mountain City, do not agree to this. I, Lung Ing of Han Mountain City, do not agree to Puqiang tribe's decision. After Lake of Colors tribe and Tranquil East tribe, the four voices that came from Han Mountain City finally gave their final push to break the silence this time. Han Feizi aside, the three of them were all-powerful, transcendent berserkers. It would have been fine if only one of them had said this, but if all three of them spoke one after another, the intimidating force formed might not be able to compare to that of a tribe, but it was not to be underestimated, especially when they were also outsiders. That was enough. I, Lu Tao, outsider of Han Mountain, do not agree to this. I'm also an outsider of Han Mountain. Even if I don't have the right, I have to tell you, Puqiang tribe, that I don't agree to this. I, Song Yun, outsider of Han Mountain, do not agree to this. Roars broke out abruptly from the silent crowd in Han Mountain City. As these voices appeared, more and more people broke out of their silence and opened their mouths to shout at Puqiang Mountain. I, Zhou Luohai, outsider of Han Mountain, do not agree to this. I, Yin Luo, outsider of Han Mountain, do not agree to this. I, Chen Feng, outsider of Han Mountain, do not agree to this. I, Chao Da, also do not agree to this. I, Chao Hong, also do not agree to this. Words that shook the sky and earth gradually tumbled out of everyone's mouths. The countless people in Han Mountain City let out the same roar at the same time. Their voices fused together and turned into a voice that could drown out the thunder in the sky and earth. It might have been an exaggeration to say that it shook the sky and earth, but it was still enough to shock Puqiang tribe. Their voices rumbled and shook the entire area, as if they could drown Puqiang tribe in it. It made all the tribe members on Puqiang Mountain turn pale, filled with terror and disbelief. The man who looked like a mountain of flesh could not speak for a long time at the top of the mountain. He did not expect that things would turn out this way. This was no longer the matter of the challenger of the chains of Han Mountain. This was an ambush by all the people in Han Mountain City, along with Lake of Colors and Tranquil East. This was a huge matter that could turn the entire Puqiang tribe upside down. This was a blatant enmity. If they did not deal with it properly, it could even lead to the destruction of their tribe. He was afraid. That fear even turned into terror. This is a scheme. This must be a scheme that was planned a long time ago. The man who looked like a mountain of flesh looked towards the elder. The elder's face was pale. This had long since surpassed his expectations. Just like the man who looked like a mountain of flesh, he did not expect this sort of change to happen. Elder, hurry up and make your decision. The man who looked like a mountain of flesh was anxious. He saw that the other people around him were already filled with terror. The tribe members in the mountain were also crying out in fear. In fact, The voices of disagreement coming from outside grew louder like thunder, causing those who heard them to be unable to help but feel terrified. Even if they were in the transcendence realm, even if the people who spoke were mostly in the blood solidification realm and were existences that were like ants, they could not help but feel terrified. Elder, the man who looked like a mountain of flesh, saw that the elder of Pucheong tribe was still standing there, not moving. In his anxiety, he looked towards the old man who had spoken rashly just now. The old man trembled. He had already sensed that something was wrong just now. When he saw the tribe leader looking towards him once again, the old man instinctively retreated. A sense of life-threatening danger rose within him. Almost the moment the man who looked like a mountain of flesh charged towards the old man also retreated swiftly and let out a shrill cry. I'm a chief of the tribe. Even if you're the tribe leader, you can't capture me just because of one sentence. As the old man charged forward, the man who looked like a mountain of flesh closed in on him. Elder, I've contributed to the tribe. I'm one of the leaders of the tribe. The old man was terrified. As he retreated, no one went to help him. All of them were silent and watched as the man who looked like a mountain of flesh closed in on him, lifted his right hand, and seized him. You forced me to do this. The old man could no longer retreat. Hatred and viciousness immediately appeared on his face. He did not want to die and was just about to throw caution to the wind and attack when the elder of Pucheong tribe, who had been silent all this while, turned around. Stop! His voice was not loud, but it was filled with an awe-inspiring might, causing the man who looked like a mountain of flesh to freeze. Once he landed on the ground, he looked towards the elder anxiously. The old man also let out a huge sigh of relief. He, too, looked at the elder in shock and uncertainty. The chief of the tribe has contributed to the tribe. The elder of Pucheong tribe's face was calm. No one could tell whether he was happy or angry. As he spoke, he walked forward. But elder, the man who looked like a mountain of flesh was just about to speak when the elder interrupted him. Not only did he contribute to the tribe, he's also loyal to the tribe. How can we kill him just because of one sentence? I can't do such a thing. The elder spoke slowly and continued walking forward. Only then did the old man completely relax. Sweat beaded on his forehead. When he looked towards the elder, his gaze was filled with gratitude. He wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply. He's loyal to the tribe. Even if the tribe is in danger, he won't run away and live alone. He will live and die with the tribe. Isn't that right, chief of the tribe? As the elder spoke, he was already 30 feet away from the old man. As long as the tribe lives, then I will live. If the tribe is in danger, then I won't live alone. The old man quickly said, If that's the case, then I'll fulfill your wish. Thank you for all you've done for the tribe. The elder of Pucheong tribe walked 10 feet away from the old man and spoke slowly. The moment his words left his mouth, a stunned look appeared on the old man's face. His expression changed drastically, and just as he was about to retreat, the elder lifted his right hand and swung it abruptly. Immediately, the chief of the tribe let out a pained cry. His body was immediately surrounded by a thick layer of black mist. He trembled and was swept up by the black mist. He was thrown out of Pucheong Mountain, and in an instant, he was brought to the sky above Han Mountain City, which was in an uproar. To be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 189. This person spoke on purpose. He's a spy and is trying to sow discord between Pucheong and Han Mountain. He deserves death. I will personally kill this person and allow the chains of Han Mountain to continue. As the old voice of the elder of Pucheong tribe reverberated in the air, the person who was swept up by the black mist in midair above Han Mountain City let out a shrill scream of pain and exploded with a bang, turning into a large amount of flesh and blood. Before the flesh and blood even landed on the ground, it turned into wisps of black mist and disappeared from the world. The wind blew past and brought away the stench of blood, causing the enraged people in Han Mountain City to slowly calm down. Su Ming stood on the seventh section of the chain and turned around to look at Han Mountain City. He wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply in the direction of Han Mountain City. His bow immediately caused the originally calm crowd in Han Mountain City to burst into loud cries once again. Sir, if you want to clear the chains of Han Mountain and clear the ninth section, then take revenge for us outsiders in Han Mountain. Go on, we're all watching you. Please go on. Go to Puqiang Mountain and clear the chains of Han Mountain. Join Freezing Sky Clan and give us outsiders hope in the future. The rising and falling voices were different from before. At that moment, all their words were filled with encouragement and hope. Su Ming, the challenger of the chains of Han Mountain, was no longer a stranger to them. He represented their desire, and he represented all the outsiders in Han Mountain. Brother, you must clear it. When you come back, I'll set up a banquet. We'll drink together. Nantian's clear voice echoed in the air. The respect in his eyes had fused into his invitation. Count me in. Lung Ying's expression was still cold, but at that moment, there was a hint of a smile on his lips. You can't miss out on something like this. Brother Nan, this time, you'll have to bring out that pot of drunken flower brew. Jiuxi's laughter traveled forth, causing the voices in Han Mountain City to become even louder. Of course, I'll definitely bring it out. Nantian laughed heartily. Xianluan's expression turned even darker. He remained silent in the distance. Su Ming heard all their words. He lifted his head and looked at Han Mountain. After a long while, he turned around and walked towards the end of the seventh section of the chain, the seventh stone pillar. He did not see the elder's figure appear on the chain again. Even the figure of the woman buried deep in his heart did not appear. Su Ming did not want to think about what this meant. He could no longer calmly tell himself that everything on the chain was fake. He was no longer certain. As the discussions and encouragement from the people outside continued, Su Ming quietly walked forward until he finished the seventh section of the chain and stepped on the seventh pillar. At this moment, the sky was already starting to brighten up. Dark clouds could be seen, covering up much of the light in the sky, giving it a hazy feeling. The eighth section. Su Ming did not rest on the seventh pillar. Instead, he lifted his foot and stepped on the eighth section of the chain. The instant he stepped on the chain, he still did not see the woman he hoped to appear. It was blurry before him. He was already very close to Puqiang Mountain. He could even see the people on Puqiang Peak staring coldly at him. As he walked on the eighth section of the chain, Su Ming felt the pressure formed by time. With each step he took, a large amount of his life force would be sucked away. Even if he circulated his qi, it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to persevere as he continued walking. Exhaustion filled Su Ming's entire body. Once he was 100-something feet away, his breathing became harsh. In fact, in the midst of his exhaustion, he could feel time sweeping past his body mercilessly, taking away his life force, his strength, and his life. It was as if he was a young man walking through the passage of time, and when he was completely old, he would turn into a pile of dust and scatter on the ground. Is this the strange thing about the eighth section of the chain? The passage of time is so fast that it'll be over before a person can accept it. Su Ming continued walking. He did not know how much time had passed, but when everything around him was no longer dark, he looked at his hand. Wrinkles had already appeared on his skin. He no longer looked like a young man, but an old man. At that moment, he had only walked half of the eighth section of the chain. As the chain swayed, it was as if time itself was swaying. Even if a person could sense it, they would not be able to stop the passage of time. As the sky and earth brightened and morning arrived, the elder and the others on Puqiang Mountain looked coldly at Su Ming, who was already very close to them on the chain. Their gazes were incredibly cold. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the brightened Puqiang Mountain. When he saw the aloof gazes, he fell silent for a moment. I can't continue. If I can't get rid of the power of time, then even if I reach the end of the eighth section, I'll still lose all my life force and die. I might as well not hide anymore. A brilliant glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his head slowly and looked at the sky filled with dark clouds. Blood veins appeared on his body. First, they appeared on his face. In an instant, a large amount of blood veins appeared on his face, which was hidden under his robes. Those blood veins were like a totem, forming a strange picture. At the same time, a terrifyingly powerful presence erupted forth from his body. The moment that presence appeared, the dark clouds in the sky seemed to have changed and started tumbling about. At that moment, the elder and the others on Puqiang Mountain were the first to notice this. As the elder's pupils shrank, the expression of the man who looked like a mountain of flesh changed, and all the tribe members on Puqiang Mountain felt the blood veins in their bodies becoming restless. It was an urge that could not be controlled. Su Ming's upper body under his robes and his arms were covered by a large amount of blood veins as the shocking presence continued growing. An even stronger presence erupted forth with a bang. The circulation of the blood veins hidden in the body was different from the circulation of the blood veins when they were completely revealed to the world. The circulation of the blood veins hidden in the body was only the qi within the body, but if they were revealed, they would be able to connect with the world, and the strongest power would erupt forth. Su Ming had always been hiding the blood veins in his body. At that moment, he no longer hid them, but revealed them completely. As the qi in his body increased at a shocking rate, cries of surprise and uproar broke out from Puqiang Mountain. Besides the elder, even the man who looked like a mountain of flesh was filled with shock. In their minds, the scene of the drastic change that happened in Han Mountain a few months ago appeared at the same time. The elder of Puqiang tribe might seem calm, but there was already a storm raging in his heart. It was not any weaker than the rage he felt when he faced all the people. He is. Disbelief appeared in the elder's eyes. There was even a hint of shock in his eyes. He suddenly realized that even though he had originally thought highly of this person, he had still underestimated him. A feeling of fear rose within the elder's body. He suddenly knew that Puqiang tribe's greatest mistake was not the rage of the people in Han Mountain. Neither was it Lake of Colors and Tranquil East. It was because they did not see this person clearly. Completion of the blood solidification realm. The elder of Puqiang tribe staggered and took a few steps back. His face turned pale. The moment he mumbled those words, Su Ming's legs were covered by a dense amount of blood veins. Even if his blood veins were hidden under his robes, the power of qi that shook the sky and earth erupted from his body, causing the weather to change. Dark clouds tumbled about, causing the wind to freeze and the world to lose its color. Su Ming lifted his head. At that moment, the dark clouds tumbled about in the sky. It was as if the change in the sky a few months ago and the appearance of the deity statue of transcendence was about to descend upon Han Mountain once again. At the same time, red lines appeared out of thin air above Su Ming. These red lines were illusions, but once they appeared, they rapidly gained corporeal form. In just a moment, they turned into a gigantic figure of 100-something feet tall in the air above Su Ming. That figure did not have a face, only a silhouette. That silhouette was formed by 979 blood veins. The moment it appeared, the presence of Su Ming's completion in the blood solidification realm reached its peak. It's him. Completion in the blood solidification realm. 979 blood veins. Just one more, and he'll reach the legendary great completion in the blood solidification realm. A person like this came to challenge the chains of Han Mountain, and we even schemed against him previously. When the man who looked like a mountain of flesh on Puqiang Mountain saw the giant of blood veins above Su Ming, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. His face was replaced by shock. The people behind him were also dumbfounded, their faces filled with disbelief. On Lake of Colors Mountain, Yin Luan sucked in sharp breath. Her heart trembled and shock appeared on her face. She did not expect that the person challenging the chains of Han Mountain would be the person from a few months ago. It's him. The old woman's tired face was replaced by a flush of red. She looked at Su Ming and the person above him, and her eyes shone with a brightness that had never appeared before. Tranquil East Mountain burst into an uproar. The elder of Tranquil East instinctively took a few steps back. His expression changed, but it was eventually replaced by shock. If he reacted this way, then it was even more so for Feng Shun, who was standing beside him. Feng Shun was completely stunned. Only Han Tsang-zi was trembling, and there was excitement on her face. After a short period of silence, sounds filled with excitement and shock erupted within Han Mountain City. Su Ming's display of his blood veins had stirred up a shocking change that could stun a person. Han Fei-zi shuddered, and her breathing quickened. Nan Tian, Ku Jiu-si, and Lung Ying were all stunned. After a long while, they snapped out of their daze. When they looked at Su Ming, their gazes were no longer filled with admiration, but with respect. 979 blood veins. He only needs one more, and he'll attain great completion. When he attains great completion in the Transcendence Realm, he'll be able to fight against those in the middle stage of the Transcendence Realm. He'll even be able to fight against those in the later stage of the Transcendence Realm. This person, once he attains great completion in the Transcendence Realm, he'll be the strongest in Han Mountain City and the 3 tribes. He can destroy an entire tribe by himself. I know that he didn't choose to transcend a few months ago because he wanted to gain another blood vein. In fact, I'm guessing that he chose the chains of Han Mountain because he wanted to use it as a stimulus to increase his blood vein by 1. If you like this work, please come to Start Point and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.